Part 2 and the conclusion. Chapter 7. They have taken us farther back than usual to a field depot so that we can be reorganized. Our company needs more than 100 reinforcements. In the meantime, when we are off duty, we loaf around. After a couple of days, Himmelstoss comes up to us. He has had the bounce knocked out of him since he has been in the trenches and wants to get on good terms with us. I am willing enough because I saw how he brought Hay Westus in when he was hit in the back. Besides, he's decent enough to treat us at the canteen when we are out of funds. Only Charden is still reserved and suspicious. But he is won over too when Himmelstoss tells us that he is taking the place of the sergeant cook who has gone on leave. As a proof, he produces on the spot 2 pounds of sugar for us and a half-pound of butter specially for Tjaden. He even sees to it that we are detailed the next 2 or 3 days to the cookhouse for potato and turnip peeling. The grub he gives us there is real officer's fare. Thus, for the moment, we have the 2 things a soldier needs for contentment: good food and rest. That's not much when one comes to think of it. A couple of years ago, we would have despised ourselves terribly. But now we are quite happy. It is all a matter of habit, even the front line. Habit is the explanation of why we seem to forget things so quickly. Yesterday we were under fire. Today we act the fool and go foraging through the countryside. Tomorrow we go up to the trenches again. We forget nothing, really. But so long as we have to stay here in the field, the front-line days, when they are past, sink down in us like a stone. They are too serious for us to be able to reflect on them at once. If we did that, we should have been destroyed long ago. I soon found out this much. Terror can be endured so long as a man simply ducks, but it kills if a man thinks about it. Just as we turn into animals when we go up to the line, because that is the only thing which brings us through safely, so we turn into wags and loafers when we are out resting. We can do nothing else. It is a sheer necessity. We want to live at any price, so we cannot burden ourselves with feelings which, though they might be ornamental enough in peacetime, would be out of place here. Kemmerich is dead. Hay Westus is dying. They will have a job with Hans Kramer's body at the Judgment Day, piecing it together after a direct hit. Martins has no legs anymore. Meyer is dead. Max is dead. Bayer is dead. Hammerling is dead. There are 120 wounded men lying somewhere or other. It is a damnable business. But what is it to do with us now? We live. If it were possible for us to save them, then it would be seen how much we cared. We would have a shot at it though we went under ourselves, for we can be damned quixotic when we like. Fear we do not know much about. Terror of death, yes, but that is a different matter. That is physical. But our comrades are dead. We cannot help them. They have their rest. And who knows what is waiting for us? We will make ourselves comfortable and sleep and eat as much as we can, stuff into our bellies, and drink and smoke so that the hours are not wasted. Life is short. The terror of the front sinks deep down when we turn our backs upon it. We make grim, coarse jests about it when a man dies. Then we say he had nipped off his turd, and so we speak of everything. That keeps us from going mad. As long as we take it that way, we maintain our own resistance. But we do not forget. It's all rot that they put in the war news about the good humor of the troops, how they are arranging dances almost before they are out of the front line. We don't act like that because we are in a good humor. We are in a good humor because otherwise we should go to pieces. If it were not so, we could not hold out much longer. Our humor becomes more bitter every month. And this I know. All these things that now, while we are still in the war, sink down in us like a stone, after the war shall waken again, and then shall begin the disentanglement of life and death. The days, the weeks, the years out here shall come back again, and our dead comrades shall then stand up again and march with us. Our heads shall be clear, we shall have a purpose, and so we shall march, our dead comrades beside us, the years at the front behind us. Against whom? Against whom? Some time ago there was an army theatre in these parts. Coloured posters of the performances are still sticking on a hoarding. With wide eyes, Crop and I stand in front of it. We can hardly credit that such things still exist. A girl in a light summer dress, with a red patent leather belt about her hips. She's standing with one hand on a railing, and with the other she holds a straw hat. She wears white stockings and white shoes, fine buckle shoes with high heels. Behind her smiles a blue lake with white horses. At the side is a bright bay. She is a lovely girl with a delicate nose, red lips and slender legs, wonderfully clean and well cared for. She certainly bathes twice a day and never has any dirt under her nails. At most, perhaps a bit of sand from the beach. Beside her stands a man in white trousers, a blue jacket and sailor's cap, but he interests us much less. The girl on the poster is a wonder to us. We have quite forgotten that there are such things, and even now we hardly believe our eyes. We have seen nothing like it for years, nothing like it for happiness, beauty, and joy. That is peacetime. That is as it should be. We feel excited. Just look at those thin shoes, though. She couldn't march many miles in those, I say, and then begin to feel silly, for it is absurd to stand in front of a picture like this and think of nothing but marching. How old would she be? Crop asks. About 22 at the most, I hazard. Then she would be older than us. She's not more than 17, let me tell you. It gives us gooseflesh. That would be good, Albert. What do you think? He nods. I have some white trousers at home, too. White trousers, say I, but a girl like that. We look askance at one another. There's not much to boast of here. 2 ragged, stained, and dirty uniforms. It is hopeless to compete. So we proceed to tear the young man with the white trousers off the hoarding, taking care not to damage the girl. That is something towards it. We could go and get deloused anyway, Crop then suggests. I am not very enthusiastic because it doesn't do one's clothes any good, and a man is lousy again inside 2 hours. But when we have considered the picture once more, I declare myself willing. I even go farther. We might see if we could get a clean shirt as well. Socks might be better, says Albert, not without reason. Yes, socks too, perhaps. Let's go and explore a bit. Then Lear and Tieden stroll up. They look at the poster, and immediately the conversation becomes smutty. Lear was the first of our class to have intercourse, and he gave stirring details of it. After his fashion, he enjoys himself over the picture, and Jaden supports him nobly. It does not distress us exactly. Who isn't smutty is no soldier. It merely does not suit us at the moment, so we edge away and march off to the delousing station with the same feeling as if it were a swell gentleman's outfitters. The houses in which we are billeted lie near the canal. On the other side of the canal there are ponds flanked with poplars. On the other side of the canal there are women too. The houses on our side have been abandoned. On the other side, though, one occasionally sees inhabitants. In the evening we go swimming. 3 women come strolling along the bank. They walk slowly and don't look away, although we have no bathing suits. Lear calls out to them. They laugh and stop to watch us. We fling remarks at them in broken French, anything that comes into our heads, hastily and all jumbled together, anything to detain them. They are not specially wonderful pieces, but then where are such to be had about here? There is one slim little brunette. Her teeth gleam when she laughs. She has quick movements. Her dress swings loosely about her legs. Although the water is cold, we are very jovial and do our best to interest them so that they will stay. We try to make jokes, and they answer with things we cannot understand. We laugh and beckon. Jarden is more crafty. He runs into the house, gets a loaf of army bread and holds it up. That produces a great effect. They nod and beckon us to come over. But we don't dare to do that. It is forbidden to cross to the opposite bank. There are sentries on all the bridges. It's impossible without a pass. So we indicate that they should come over to us, but they shake their heads and point to the bridge. They are not allowed to pass either. They turn away and walk slowly down the canal, keeping along the towpath all the way. We accompany them swimming. After a few hundred yards, they turn off and point to a house that stands a little distance away among the trees and shrubbery. Lear asks if they live there. They laugh. Sure, that's their house. We call out to them that we would like to come, sometime when the guards cannot see us. At night. Tonight. They raise their hands, put them together, rest their faces on them and shut their eyes. They understand. The slim brunette does a two-step. The blonde girl twitters, "Bread. Good." Eagerly we assure them that we will bring some with us. And other tasty bits too. We roll our eyes and try to explain with our hands. Lear nearly drowns trying to demonstrate a sausage. If it were necessary, we would promise them a whole quartermaster's store. They go off and frequently turn and look back. We climb out on the bank on our side of the canal and watch to see whether they go into the house, for they might easily have been lying. Then we swim back. No one can cross the bridge without leave, so we will simply have to swim over at night. We are full of excitement. We cannot last out without a drink, so we go to the canteen where there is beer and a kind of punch. We drink punch and tell one another lying tales of our experiences. Each man gladly believes the other man's story, only waiting impatiently till he can cap it with a taller one. Our hands are fidgety. We smoke countless cigarettes, until Crop says, "We might as well take them a couple of cigarettes too." So we put some inside our caps to keep them. The sky turns apple green. There are 4 of us, but only 3 can go. We must shake off Jaden, so ply him with rum and punch until he rocks. As it turns dark, we go to our billets, Jaden in the center. We are all glowing and full of a lust for adventure. The little brunette is mine. We settled that by cutting for her. Jaden drops on his sack of straw and snores. Once he wakes up and grins so craftily that we are alarmed and begin to think he is cheating and that we have given him the punch to no purpose. Then he drops back again and sleeps on. We each get hold of a whole army loaf and wrap it up in newspaper. The cigarettes we put in too, as well as 3 good rations of liver sausage that were issued to us this evening. That makes a decent present. We stow the things carefully in our boots. We have to take them to protect our feet against treading on wire and broken glass on the other bank. As we must swim for it, we can take no other clothes. But it is not far and quite dark. We make off with our boots in our hands. Swiftly we slip into the water, lie on our backs and swim, holding the boots with their contents up over our heads. We climb out carefully on the opposite bank, take out the packages and put on our boots. We put the things under our arms, and so, all wet and naked, clothed only in our boots, we break into a trot. We find the house at once. It lies among the trees. Lear trips over a root and skins his elbows. "No matter," he says gaily. The windows are shuttered. We slip round the house and try to peer through the cracks. Then we grow impatient. Suddenly, Crop hesitates. "What if there's a major in with them?" "Then we just clear off," grins Lear. "He can try to read our regimental numbers here," and smacks his behind. The door of the courtyard stands open. Our boots make a great clatter. The house door opens, a chink of light shines through, and a woman cries out in a scared voice, "Shh! Shh! Camarade! Bon ami!" we say, and show our packages protestingly. The other 2 are now on the scene. The door opens wide and the light floods over us. They recognize us, and all 3 burst into laughter at our appearance. They rock and sway in the doorway. They laugh so much. How supple their movements are. "Un moment!" They disappear and throw us bits of clothing, which we gladly wrap round ourselves. Then we venture in. A small lamp burns in the room, which is warm and smells a little of perfume. We unwrap our parcels and hand them over to the women. Their eyes shine. It is obvious that they are hungry. Then we all become rather embarrassed. Lear makes the gestures of eating, and then they come to life again and bring out plates and knives and fall to on the food, and they hold up every slice of liver sausage and admire it before they eat it, and we sit proudly by. They overwhelm us with their chatter. We understand very little of it, but we listen and the words sound friendly. No doubt we all look very young. The little brunette strokes my hair and says what all the French women say, "La guerre, grand malheur, pauvre garçon." I hold her arm tightly and press my lips into the palm of her hand. Her fingers close round my face. Close above me are her bewildering eyes, the soft brown of her skin and her red lips. Her mouth speaks words I do not understand, nor do I fully understand her eyes. They seem to say more than we anticipated when we came here. There are other rooms adjoining. In passing, I see Lear. He has made a great hit with the blonde, and he knows it too. But I am lost in remoteness, in weakness, and in a passion to which I yield myself trustingly. My desires are strangely compounded of yearning and misery. I feel giddy. There is nothing here that a man can hold on to. We have left our boots at the door, they have given us slippers instead, and now nothing remains to recall for me the assurance and self-confidence of the soldier. No rifle, no belt, no tunic, no cap. I let myself drop into the unknown, come what may, yet, in spite of all, I feel somewhat afraid. The little brunette contracts her brows when she is thinking, but when she talks, they are still. And often the sound does not quite become a word, but suffocates or floats away over me, half finished. An arch, a pathway, a comet. What have I known of it? What do I know of it? The words of this foreign tongue that I hardly understand, they caress me to a quietness in which the room grows dim and dissolves in the half-light, and only the face above me lives and is clear. How various is a face! But an hour ago it was strange, and now it is touched with a tenderness that comes, not from it, but out of the night. The world and the blood, all these things seem to shine in it together. The objects in the room are touched by it and transformed. They become isolated, and I feel almost awed at the sight of my clear skin when the light of the lamp falls upon it and the cool, brown hand passes over it. How different all this is from the conditions in the soldiers' brothels, to which we are allowed to go and where we have to wait in long queues. I wish I never thought of them, but desire turns my mind to them involuntarily, and I am afraid, for it might be impossible ever to be free of them again. But then I feel the lips of the little brunette, and press myself against them. My eyes close, and I let it all fall from me, war and terror and grossness, in order to awaken young and happy. I think of the picture of the girl on the poster, and for a moment believe that my life depends on winning her. And if I press ever deeper into the arms that embrace me, perhaps a miracle may happen. So, after a time, we find ourselves reassembled again. Lear is in high spirits. We pull on our boots and take our leave warmly. The night air cools our hot bodies. The rustling poplars loom large in the darkness. The moon floats in the heavens and in the waters of the canal. We do not run, we walk beside one another with long strides. "That was worth a ration loaf," says Lear. I cannot trust myself to speak. I am not in the least happy. Then we hear footsteps and dodge behind a shrub. The steps come nearer, close by us. We see a naked soldier in boots, just like ourselves. He has a package under his arm and gallops onward. It is Jaden in full course. He has disappeared already. We laugh. In the morning he will curse us. Unobserved, we arrive again at our sacks of straw. I am called to the orderly room. The company commander gives me a leave pass and a travel pass and wishes me a good journey. I look to see how much leave I have got. 17 days, 14 days leave and 3 days for travelling. It is not enough, and I ask whether I cannot have 5 days for travelling. Bertink points to my pass. There I see that I am not to return to the front immediately. After my leave, I have to report for a course of training to a camp on the moors. The others congratulate me. Cat gives me good advice and tells me I ought to try to get a base job. If you are smart, you'll hang on to it. I would rather not have gone for another 8 days. We are to stay here that much longer, and it is good here. Naturally, I have to stand the others' drinks at the canteen. We are all a little bit drunk. I become gloomy. I will be away for 6 weeks. That is lucky, of course, but what may happen before I get back? Shall I meet all these fellows again? Already Hay has gone. Who will the next be? As we drink, I look at each of them in turn. Albert sits beside me and smokes. He's silent. We have always been together. Opposite squats Kat with his drooping shoulders, his broad thumb and calm voice. Müller with the protruding teeth and the booming laugh. Jarden with his mousy eyes. Lear, who has grown a full beard and looks at least 40. Over us hangs a dense cloud of smoke. Where would a soldier be without tobacco? The canteen is his refuge, and beer is far more than a drink. It is a token that a man can move his limbs and stretch in safety. We do it ceremonially. We stretch our legs out in front of us and spit deliberately. That is the only way. How it all rises up before a man when he is going away the next morning. At night we go again to the other side of the canal. I am almost afraid to tell the little brunette that I am going away, and when I return we will certainly be far away from here. We will never see one another again. But she merely nods and takes no special notice. At first I am at a loss to understand, then it suddenly dawns on me. Yes, Léa is right. If I were going up to the front, then she would have again called me pauvre garçon, but merely going on leave. She does not want to hear about that. That is not nearly so interesting. May she go to the devil with her chattering talk. A man dreams of a miracle and wakes up to loaves of bread. Next morning, after I have been deloused, I go to the railhead. Albert and Kat come with me. At the halt, we learn that it will be a couple of hours yet before the train leaves. The other two have to go back to duty. We take leave of one another. Good luck, Kat. Good luck, Albert. They go off and wave once or twice. Their figures dwindle. I know their every step and movement. I would recognize them at any distance. Then they disappear. I sit down on my pack and wait. Suddenly, I become filled with a consuming impatience to be gone. I lie down on many a station platform. I stand before many a soup kitchen. I squat on many a bench. Then at last the landscape becomes gloomy, mysterious, and familiar. It glides past the western windows with its villages, their thatched roofs like caps, pulled over the whitewashed, half-timbered houses, its cornfields, gleaming like mother of pearl in the slanting light, its orchards, its barns and old lime trees. The names of the stations begin to take on meaning, and my heart trembles. The train stamps and stamps onward. I stand at the window and hold on to the frame. These names mark the boundaries of my youth. Smooth meadows, fields, farmyards. A solitary team moves against the skyline along the road that runs parallel to the horizon. A barrier before which peasants stand waiting, girls waving, children playing on the embankment, roads leading into the country, smooth roads without artillery. It is evening, and if the train did not rattle, I should cry out. The plain unfolds itself. In the distance, the soft blue silhouette of the mountain ranges begins to appear. I recognize the characteristic outline of the Dolbenberg, a jagged comb springing up precipitously from the limit of the forests. Behind it should lie the town. But now the sun streams through the world, dissolving everything in its golden red light. The train swings round one curve and then another. Far away, in a long line, one behind the other, stand the poplars, unsubstantial, swaying and dark, fashioned out of shadow, light, and desire. The field swings round as the train encircles it, and the intervals between the trees diminish. The trees become a block, and for a moment I see one only. Then they reappear from behind the foremost tree and stand out a long line against the sky until they are hidden by the first houses. A street crossing. I stand at the window. I cannot drag myself away. The others put their baggage ready for getting out. I repeat to myself the name of the street that we cross ever, Bremerstrasse, Bremerstrasse. Below there are cyclists, lorries, men. It is a grey street and a grey subway. It embraces me as though it were my mother. Then the train stops, and there is the station with noise and cries and sentries. I pick up my pack and fasten the straps. I take my rifle in my hand and stumble down the steps. On the platform I look round. I know no one among all the people hurrying to and fro. A Red Cross sister offers me something to drink. I turn away. She smiles at me too foolishly, so obsessed with her own importance. Just look, I am giving a soldier coffee. She calls me comrade, but I will have none of it. Outside in front of the station, the stream roars alongside the street. It rushes foaming from the sluices of the mill bridge. There stands the old square watchtower, in front of it the great mottled lime tree, and behind it the evening. Here we have often sat. How long ago it is. We have passed over this bridge and breathed the cool, acid smell of the stagnant water. We have leaned over the still water on this side of the lock. Lock, where the green creepers and weeds hang from the piles of the bridge, and on hot days we rejoiced in the spouting foam on the other side of the lock and told tales about our school teachers. I pass over the bridge, I look right and left. The water is as full of weeds as ever, and it still shoots over in gleaming arches. In the tower building, laundresses still stand with bare arms as they used to over the clean linen, and the heat from the ironing pours out through the open windows. Dogs trot along the narrow street. Before the doors of the houses people stand and follow me with their gaze as I pass by, dirty and heavy laden. In this confectioner's we used to eat ices, and there we learned to smoke cigarettes. Walking down the street I know every shop, the colonial warehouse, the chemist's, the tobacconists. Then at last I stand before the brown door with its worn latch, and my hand grows heavy. I open the door, and a wonderful freshness comes out to meet me. My eyes are dim. The stairs creak under my boots. Upstairs a door rattles. Someone is looking over the railing. It is the kitchen door that was opened. They are cooking potato cakes. The house reeks of it. And today, of course, is Saturday. That will be my sister leaning over. For a moment I am shy and lower my head. Then I take off my helmet and look up. Yes, it is my eldest sister. "Paul!" she cries. "Paul!" I nod. My pack bumps against the banisters. My rifle is so heavy. She pulls a door open and calls, "Mother, Mother, Paul is here." I can go no further. Mother, Mother, Paul is here. I lean against the wall and grip my helmet and rifle. I hold them as tight as I can, but I cannot take another step. The staircase fades before my eyes. I support myself with the butt of my rifle against my feet and clench my teeth fiercely, but I cannot speak a word. My sister's call has made me powerless. I can do nothing. I struggle to make myself laugh, to speak, but no word comes, and so I stand on the steps, miserable, helpless, paralyzed, and against my will the tears run down my cheeks. My sister comes back and says, "Why? What is the matter?" Then I pull myself together and stagger onto the landing. I lean my rifle in a corner, I set my pack against the wall, place my helmet on it, and fling down my equipment and baggage. Then I say fiercely, "Bring me a handkerchief." She gives me one from the cupboard, and I dry my face. Above me on the wall hangs the glass case with the colored butterflies that once I collected. Now I hear my mother's voice. It comes from the bedroom. "Is she in bed?" I ask my sister. "She is ill," she replies. I go in to her, give her my hand, and say as calmly as I can, "Here I am, Mother." She lies still in the dim light. Then she asks anxiously, "Are you wounded?" And I feel her searching glance. "No, I have got leave." My mother is very pale. I am afraid to make a light. "Here I lie now," says she, and cry instead of being glad. "Are you sick, Mother?" I ask. "I'm going to get up a little today," she says, and turns to my sister, who is continually running to the kitchen to watch that the food does not burn. "And put out the jar of preserved whortleberries. You like that, don't you?" she asks me. "Yes, Mother. I haven't had any for a long time." "We might almost have known you were coming," laughs my sister. "There is just your favorite dish, potato cakes, and even whortleberries to go with them too." "And it is Saturday," I add. "Sit here beside me," says my mother. She looks at me. Her hands are white and sickly and frail compared with mine. We say very little, and I am thankful that she asks nothing. What ought I to say? Everything I could have wished for has happened. I have come out of it safely and sit here beside her, and in the kitchen stands my sister making the evening bread and singing. "Dear boy," says my mother softly. We were never very demonstrative in our family. Poor folk who toil and are full of cares are not so. It is not their way to protest what they already know. When my mother says to me, "Dear boy," it means much more than when another uses it. I know well enough that the jar of whortleberries is the only one they have had for months, and that she has kept it for me, and the somewhat stale cakes that she gives me too. She has taken a favourable opportunity of getting a few, and has put them all by for me. I sit by her bed, and through the window, the chestnut trees in the beer garden opposite glow in brown and gold. I breathe deeply and say over to myself, "You are at home, you are at home." But a sense of strangeness will not leave me. I can find nothing of myself in all these things. There is my mother, there is my sister, there my case of butterflies, and there the mahogany piano. But I am not myself there. There is a distance, a veil between us. I go and fetch my pack to the bedside and turn out the things I have brought. A whole Edamame cheese that Cat provided me with, 2 loaves of army bread, 3/4 of a pound of butter, 2 tins of liver sausage, a pound of dripping, and a little bag of rice. I suppose you can make some use of that? They nod. Is it pretty bad for food here? I inquire. Yes, there's not much. Do you get enough out there? I smile and point to the things I have brought. Not always quite so much as that, of course, but we fare reasonably well. Erna goes out to bring in the food. Suddenly, my mother seizes hold of my hand and asks falteringly, "Was it very bad out there, Paul?" Mother, what should I answer to that? You would not understand and never realize it, and you never should realize it. Was it bad, you ask? You, mother. I shake my head and say, "No, mother, not so very. There are always a lot of us together, so it isn't so bad." Yes, but Heinrich Bredemeyer was here just lately, and he said it was terrible out there now, with the gas and all the rest of it. It is my mother who says that. She says, "with the gas and all the rest of it." She does not know what she is saying. She is merely anxious for me. Should I tell her how we once found 3 enemy trenches with their garrison all stiff as though stricken with apoplexy? Against the parapet in the dugouts, just where they were, the men stood and lay about, with blue faces, dead. No, mother, that's only talk, I answer. There's not very much in what Bredemeyer says. You see, for instance, I'm well and fit. Before my mother's tremulous anxiety, I recover my composure. Now I can walk about and talk and answer questions without fear of having suddenly to lean against the wall, because the world turns soft as rubber and my veins become brimstone. My mother wants to get up, so I go for a while to my sister in the kitchen. "What is the matter with her?" I ask. She shrugs her shoulders. She has been in bed 2 months now, but we did not want to write and tell you. Several doctors have been to see her. One of them said it is probably cancer again. I go to the district commandant to report myself. Slowly I wander through the streets. Occasionally someone speaks to me. I do not delay long, for I have little inclination to talk. On my way back from the barracks, a loud voice calls out to me. Still lost in thought, I turn round and find myself confronted by a major. "Can't you salute?" he blusters. "Sorry, Major," I say in embarrassment. "I didn't notice you." "Don't you know how to speak properly?" he roars. I would like to hit him in the face, but control myself, for my leave depends on it. I click my heels and say, "I did not see you, Herr Major." "Then keep your eyes open," he snorts. "What is your name?" I give it. His fat red face is furious. "What regiment?" I give him full particulars. Even yet he has not had enough. "Where are they?" But I have had more than enough and say, "Between Langemarck and Bixschute." "Eh?" he asks, a bit stupefied. I explain to him that I arrived on leave only an hour or 2 since, thinking that he would then trot along, but not at all. He gets even more furious. "You think you can bring your front-line manners here? What?" "Well, we don't stand that sort of thing. Thank God we have discipline here." 20 paces backwards, double march," he commands. I am mad with rage, but I cannot say anything to him. He could put me under arrest if he liked. So I double back and then march up to him. 6 paces from him, I spring to a stiff salute and maintain it until I am 6 paces beyond him. He calls me back again and affably gives me to understand that for once he is pleased to put mercy before justice. I pretend to be duly grateful. "Now, dismiss," he says. I turn about smartly and march off. That ruins the evening for me. I go back home and throw my uniform into a corner. I ought to have done that before. Then I take out my civilian clothes from the wardrobe and put them on. I feel awkward. The suit is rather tight and short. I have grown in the army. Collar and tie give me some trouble. In the end, my sister ties the bow for me. But how light the suit is. It feels as though I had nothing on but a shirt and underpants. I look at myself in the glass. It is a strange sight. A sunburnt, overgrown candidate for confirmation gazes at me in astonishment. My mother is pleased to see me wearing civilian clothes. It makes me less strange to her. But my father would rather I kept my uniform on so that he could take me to visit his acquaintances. But I refuse. It is pleasant to sit quietly somewhere, in the beer garden, for example, under the chestnuts by the skittle alley. The leaves fall down on the table and on the ground, only a few, the first. A glass of beer stands in front of me. I've learned to drink in the army. The glass is half empty, but there are still a few good swigs ahead of me, and besides, I can always order a second and a third if I wish to. There are no bugles and no bombardments. The children of the house play in the skittle alley, and the dog rests his head against my knee. The sky is blue. Between the leaves of the chestnuts rises the green spire of St. Margaret's Church. This is good. I like it, but I cannot get on with the people. My mother is the only one who asks no questions. Not so my father. He wants me to tell him about the front. He is curious in a way that I find stupid and distressing. I no longer have any real contact with him. There is nothing he likes more than just hearing about it. I realize he does not know that a man cannot talk of such things. I would do it willingly, but it is too dangerous for me to put these things into words. I am afraid they might then become gigantic, and I be no longer able to master them. What would become of us if everything that happens out there were quite clear to us? So I confine myself to telling him a few amusing things. But he wants to know whether I have ever had a hand-to-hand fight. I say no, and get up and go out. But that does not mend matters. After I have been startled a couple of times in the street by the screaming of the tramcars, which resembles the shriek of a shell coming straight for one, somebody taps me on the shoulder. It is my German master, and he fastens on me with the usual question. Well, how are things out there? Terrible. Terrible, eh? Yes, it is dreadful. But we must carry on. And after all, you do at least get decent food out there, so I hear. You look well, Paul, and fit. Naturally, it's worse here. Naturally. The best for our soldiers every time. That goes without saying. He drags me along to a table with a lot of others. They welcome me. A headmaster shakes hands with me and says, "So you come from the front? What is the spirit like out there?" "Excellent, eh? Excellent." I explain that no one would be sorry to be back home. He laughs uproariously. I can well believe it. But first you have to give the froggies a good hiding. Do you smoke? Here, try one. Waiter, bring a beer as well for our young warrior. Unfortunately, I have accepted the cigar, so I have to remain, and they are all so dripping with goodwill that it is impossible to object. All the same, I feel annoyed and smoke like a chimney as hard as I can. In order to make at least some show of appreciation, I toss off the beer in one gulp. Immediately, a second is ordered. People know how much they are indebted to the soldiers. They argue about what we ought to annex. The headmaster with the steel watch chain wants to have at least the whole of Belgium, the coal areas of France, and a slice of Russia. He produces reasons why we must have them, and is quite inflexible until at last the others give in to him. Then he begins to expound just whereabouts in France the breakthrough must come, and turns to me. Now, shove ahead a bit out there with your everlasting trench warfare. Smash through the Johnnies, and then there will be peace. I reply that in our opinion, a breakthrough may not be possible. The enemy may have too many reserves. Besides, the war may be rather different from what people think. He dismisses the idea loftily and informs me I know nothing about it. The details, yes, says he, but this relates to the whole, and of that you are not able to judge. You see only your little sector, and so cannot have any general survey. You do your duty, you risk your lives. That deserves the highest honor. Every man of you ought to have the Iron Cross. But first of all, the enemy line must be broken through in Flanders, and then rolled up from the top. He blows his nose and wipes his beard. Completely rolled up they must be, from the top to the bottom. And then to Paris. I would like to know just how he pictures it to himself and pour the third glass of beer into me. Immediately he orders another. But I break away. He stuffs a few more cigars into my pocket and sends me off with a friendly slap. All of the best. I hope we will soon hear something worthwhile from you. I imagined leave would be different from this. Indeed, it was different a year ago. It is I, of course, that have changed in the interval. There lies a gulf between that time and today. At that time, I still knew nothing about the war. We had been only in quiet sectors. But now I see that I have been crushed without knowing it. I find I do not belong here anymore. It is a foreign world. Some of these people ask questions, some ask no questions, but one can see that they are quite confident they know all about it. They often say so with their air of comprehension, so there is no point in discussing it. They make up a picture of it for themselves. I prefer to be alone so that no one troubles me. For they all come back to the same thing, how badly it goes and how well it goes. One thinks it is this way, another that, and yet they are always absorbed in the things that go to make up their own existence. Formerly, I lived in just the same way myself, but now I feel no contact here any longer. They talk to me too much. They have worries, aims, desires that I cannot comprehend. I often sit with one of them in the little beer garden and try to explain to him that this is really the only thing. Just to sit quietly, like this. They understand, of course. They agree. They may even feel it so too. But only with words, only with words. Yes, that is it. They feel it, but always with only half of themselves. The rest of their being is taken up with other things. They are so divided in themselves that none feels it with his whole essence. I cannot even say myself exactly what I mean. When I see them here, in their rooms, in their offices, about their occupations, I feel an irresistible attraction in it. I would like to be here too and forget the war, but also it repels me. It is so narrow. How can that fill a man's life? He ought to smash it to bits. How can they do it? While out at the front, the splinters are whining over the shell holes and the star shells go up. The wounded are carried back on waterproof sheets, and comrades crouch in the trenches. They are different men here, men I cannot properly understand, whom I envy and despise. I must think of Kat and Albert and Müller and Tjarden. What will they be doing? No doubt they are sitting in the canteen, or perhaps swimming. Soon they will have to go up to the front line again. In my room behind the table stands a brown leather sofa. I sit down on it. On the walls are pasted countless pictures that I once used to cut out of the newspapers. In between are drawings and postcards that have come my way. In the corner is a small iron stove. Against the wall opposite stand the bookshelves with my books. I used to live in this room before I was a soldier. The books I bought gradually with the money I earned by coaching. Many of them are second-hand, all the classics, for example. One volume in blue cloth boards cost 1 mark 20 pfennig. I bought them complete because I was thoroughgoing. I did not trust the editors of selections, even though they may have chosen all the best. So I purchased only collected works. I read most of them with laudable zeal, but few of them really appealed to me. I preferred the other books, the moderns, which were, of course, much dearer. A few I came by, not quite honestly. I borrowed and did not return them because I did not want to part with them. One shelf is filled with school books. They are not so well cared for, they are badly thumbed, and pages have been torn out for certain purposes. Then below are periodicals, papers, and letters, all jammed in together with drawings and rough sketches. I want to think myself back into that time. It is still in the room, I feel it at once. The walls have preserved it. My hands rest on the arms of the sofa. Now I make myself at home and draw up my legs so that I sit comfortably in the corner, in the arms of the sofa. The little window is open. Through it I see the familiar picture of the street with the rising spire of the church at the end. There are a couple of flowers on the table, pen holders, a shell as a paperweight, the inkwell. Here nothing is changed. It will be like this too if I am lucky, when the war is over and I come back here for good. I will sit here just like this and look at my room and wait. I feel excited, but I do not want to be, for that is not right. I want that quiet rapture again. I want to feel the same powerful, nameless urge that I used to feel when I turned to my books. The breath of desire that then arose from the colored backs of the books shall fill me again, melt the heavy, dead lump of lead that lies somewhere in me, and waken again the impatience of the future, the quick joy in the world of thought. It shall bring back again the lost eagerness of my youth. I sit and wait. It occurs to me that I must go and see Kemmerich's mother. I might visit Mittelstadt too. He should be at the barracks. I look out of the window. Beyond the sober picture of the street appears a range of hills, distant and light. It changes to a clear day in autumn, and I sit by the fire with Kat and Albert and eat potatoes baked in their skins. But I do not want to think of that. I sweep it away. The room shall speak. It must catch me up and hold me. I want to feel that I belong here. I want to hearken and know when I go back to the front that the war will sink down, be drowned utterly in the great homecoming tide. Know that it will then be past forever, and not gnaw us continually, that it will have none but an outward power over us. The backs of the books stand in rows. I know them all still. I remember arranging them in order. I implore them with my eyes. Speak to me, take me up, take me, life of my youth. You who are carefree, beautiful, receive me again. I wait. I wait. Images float through my mind, but they do not grip me. They are mere shadows and memories. Nothing, nothing. My disquietude grows. A terrible feeling of foreignness suddenly rises up in me. I cannot find my way back. I am shut out, though I entreat earnestly and put forth all my strength. Nothing stirs, listless and wretched, like a condemned man. I sit there, and the past withdraws itself. And at the same time I fear to importune it too much, because I do not know what might happen then. I am a soldier. I must cling to that. Wearily I stand up and look out of the window. Then I take one of the books, intending to read, and turn over the leaves. But I put it away and take out another. There are passages in it that have been marked. I look, turn over the pages, take up fresh books. Already they are piled up beside me. Speedily more join the heap, papers, magazines, letters. I stand there dumb, as before a judge, dejected. Words, words, words. They do not reach me. Slowly I place the books back in the shelves. Nevermore. Quietly I go out of the room. Still I do not give up hope. I do not indeed go to my room any more, but comfort myself with the thought that a few days are not enough to judge by. Afterwards, later on, there is plenty of time for that. So I go over to see Mittelstadt in the barracks, and we sit in his room. There is an atmosphere about it that I do not like, but with which I am quite familiar. Mittelstadt has some news ready for me that electrifies me on the spot. He tells me Cantorek has been called up as a territorial. Just think of it, says he, and takes out a couple of good cigars. I come back here from the hospital and bump right into him. He stretches out his paw to me and bleats, "Hello, Mittelstadt. How are you?" I look at him and say, "Territorial Cantorek. Business is business, and schnapps is schnapps. You ought to know that well enough yourself. Stand to attention when you speak to a superior officer." You should have seen his face. A cross between a dud and a pickled cucumber. He tried once again to chum up, so I snubbed him a bit harder. Then he brought up his biggest guns and asked confidentially, "Would you like me to use my influence so that you can take an emergency exam?" He was trying to remind me of those things, you know. Then I got mad, and I reminded him of something instead. Territorial Cantorek, 2 years ago you preached us into enlisting, and among us there was one, Joseph Bem, who didn't want to enlist. He was killed 3 months before he would have been called up in the ordinary way. If it had not been for you, he would have lived just that much longer. And now, dismiss. You will hear from me later. It was easy to get put in charge of his company. First thing I did was to take him to the stores and fit him out with a suitable equipment. You will see in a minute. We go out to the parade ground. The company has fallen in. Mittelstadt stands them at ease and inspects. Then I see Cantorek, and am scarcely able to stifle my laughter. He is wearing a faded blue tunic. On the back and in the sleeves there are big dark patches. The overcoat must have belonged to a giant. The black, worn breeches are just as much too short. They reach barely halfway down his calf. The boots, tough old clodhoppers with turned-up toes and laces at the side, are much too big for him. But as a compensation, the cap is too small, a terribly dirty, mean little pillbox. The whole rig-out is just pitiful. Mittelstadt stops in front of him. Territorial Cantorek, do you call those buttons polished? You seem as though you can never learn. Inadequate, Cantorek, quite inadequate. It makes me bubble with glee. In school, Cantorek used to chasten Mittelstadt with exactly the same expression. Inadequate, Mittelstadt, quite inadequate. Mittelstadt continues to upbraid him. Look at Böttcher now. There's a model for you to learn from. I can hardly believe my eyes. Böttcher is there too, Böttcher, our school porter, and he is a model. Cantorek shoots a glance at me as if he would like to eat me, but I grin at him innocently, as though I do not recognize him any more. Nothing could look more ludicrous than his forage cap and his uniform, and this is the object before whom we used to stand in anguish, as he sat up there enthroned at his desk, spearing at us with his pencil for our mistakes in those irregular French verbs with which afterwards we made so little headway in France. That is barely 2 years ago, and now here stands Territorial Cantorek, the spell quite broken, with bent knees, arms like pot-hooks, unpolished buttons, and that ludicrous rig-out, an impossible soldier. I cannot reconcile this with the menacing figure at the schoolmaster's desk. I wonder what I, the old soldier, would do if this skin full of woe ever dared to say to me again, Bäumer, give the imperfect of Allah. Then Mittelstadt makes them practice skirmishing, and as a favor appoints Cantorek squad leader. Now in skirmishing, the squad leader has always to keep 20 paces in front of his squad. If the order comes, on the march, about turn, the line of skirmishers simply turns about, but the squad leader, who now finds himself suddenly 20 paces in rear of the line, has to rush up at the double and take his position again 20 paces in front of the squad. That makes altogether 40 paces double march. But no sooner has he arrived than the order, on the march, about turn, comes again, and he once more has to race at top speed another 40 paces to the other side. In this way, the squad has made merely the turnabout and a couple of paces, while the squad leader dashes backwards and forwards like a fart on a curtain pole. That is one of Himmelstoss's well-worn recipes. Cantorek can hardly expect anything else from Mittelstadt, for he once messed up the latter's chance of promotion, and Mittelstadt would be a big fool not to make the best of such a good opportunity as this before he goes back to the front again. A man might well die easier after the army has given him just one such stroke of luck. In the meantime, Cantorek is dashing up and down like a wild boar. After a while, Mittelstadt stops the skirmish and begins the very important exercise of creeping. On hands and knees, carrying his gun in regulation fashion, Cantorek shoves his absurd figure over the sand immediately in front of us. He is breathing hard, and his panting is music. Mittelstadt encourages Cantorek the Territorial with quotations from Cantorek the Schoolmaster. Territorial Cantorek, we have the good fortune to live in a great age. We must all humble ourselves and for once put aside bitterness. Cantorek sweats and spits out a dirty piece of wood that has lodged in his teeth. Mittelstadt stoops down and says reproachfully, and in the trifles never lose sight of the great adventure, Territorial Cantorek. It amazes me that Cantorek does not explode with a bang, especially when, during physical exercises, Mittelstadt copies him to perfection, seizing him by the seat of his trousers as he is climbing along the horizontal bar so that he can just raise his chin above the beam and then starts to give him good advice. That is exactly what Cantorek used to do to him at school. The extra fatigues are next detailed off. Cantorek and Böttcher, bread fatigue, take the handcart with you. In a couple of minutes the two set off together, pushing the barrow. Cantorek, in a fury, walks with his head down, but the porter is delighted to have scored light duty. The bakehouse is away at the other end of the town, and the two must go there and back through the whole length of it. They've done that a couple of times already, grins Mittelstadt. There are still a few people waiting to see them. Excellent, I say, but hasn't he reported you yet? He did try. Our CO laughed like the deuce when he heard the story. He hasn't any time for schoolmasters. Besides, I'm sweet with his daughter. He'll mess up the examination for you. I don't care, says Mittelstadt calmly. Besides, his complaint came to nothing because I could show that he had had hardly anything but light duty. Couldn't you polish him up a bit, I ask. He's too stupid. I couldn't be bothered, answers Mittelstadt contemptuously. What is leave? A pause that only makes everything after it so much worse. Already the sense of parting begins to intrude itself. My mother watches me silently. I know she counts the days. Every morning she is sad. It is one day less. She has put away my pack. She does not want to be reminded by it. The hours pass quickly if a man broods. I pull myself together and go with my sister to the butcher's to get a pound of bones. That is a great luxury, and people line up early in the morning and stand waiting. Many of them faint. We have no luck. After waiting by turns for 3 hours, the queue disperses. The bones have not lasted out. It is a good thing I get my rations. I bring them to my mother, and in that way we all get something decent to eat. The days grow ever more strained, and my mother's eyes more sorrowful. 4 days left now. I must go and see Kemmerich's mother. I cannot write that down. This quaking, sobbing woman who shakes me and cries out on me, "Why are you living then, when he is dead?" Who drowns me in tears and calls out, "What are you there for at all, child, when you—" Who drops into a chair and wails, "Did you see him? Did you see him then? How did he die?" I tell her he was shot through the heart and died instantaneously. She looks at me. She doubts me. You lie. I know better. I have felt how terribly he died. I have heard his voice at night. I have felt his anguish. Tell the truth. I want to know it. I must know it. No, I say. I was beside him. He died at once. She pleads with me gently. Tell me. You must tell me. I know you want to comfort me, but don't you see, you torment me far more than if you told me the truth? I cannot bear the uncertainty. Tell me how it was, and even though it will be terrible, it will be far better than what I have to think if you don't. I will never tell her. She can make mincemeat out of me first. I console her, but she strikes me as rather stupid all the same. Why doesn't she stop worrying? Kemmerich will stay dead whether she knows about it or not. When a man has seen so many dead, he cannot understand any longer why there should be so much anguish over a single individual. So I say rather impatiently, he died immediately. He felt absolutely nothing at all. His face was quite calm. She is silent. Then she says slowly, "Will you swear it?" "Yes." "By everything that is sacred to you?" Good God, what is there that is sacred to me? Such things change pretty quickly with us. Yes, he died at once. Are you willing never to come back yourself if it isn't true? May I never come back if he wasn't killed instantaneously. I would swear to anything, but she seems to believe me. She moans and weeps steadily. I have to tell how it happened, so I invent a story, and I almost believe it myself. As I leave, she kisses me and gives me a picture of him. In his recruit's uniform, he leans on a round, rustic table with legs made of birch branches. Behind him, a wood is painted on a curtain, and on the table stands a mug of beer. It is the last evening at home. Everyone is silent. I go to bed early, I seize the pillow, press it against myself and bury my head in it. Who knows if I will ever lie in a feather bed again? Late in the night, my mother comes into my room. She thinks I am asleep, and I pretend to be so. To talk, to stay awake with one another, it is too hard. She sits long into the night, although she is in pain and often writhes. At last I can bear it no longer and pretend I have just wakened up. Go and sleep, mother. You will catch cold here. I can sleep enough later, she says. I sit up. I don't go straight back to the front, mother. I have to do 4 weeks at the training camp. I may come over from there one Sunday, perhaps." She is silent. Then she asks gently, "Are you very much afraid?" "No, mother. I would like to tell you to be on your guard against the women out in France. They are no good." "Ah, mother, mother. You still think I am a child. Why can I not put my head in your lap and weep? Why have I always to be strong and self-controlled? I would like to weep and be comforted too. Indeed, I am little more than a child. In the wardrobe still hang my short boy's trousers. It is such a little time ago. Why is it over?" "Where we are, there aren't any women, mother," I say as calmly as I can. "And be very careful at the front, Paul." "Ah, mother, mother. Why do I not take you in my arms and die with you? What poor wretches we are." "Yes, mother, I will. I will pray for you every day, Paul." "Ah, mother, mother. Let us rise up and go out, back through the years, where the burden of all this misery lies on us no more, back to you and me alone, mother. Perhaps you can get a job that is not so dangerous." "Yes, mother. Perhaps I can get into the cookhouse. That can easily be done." "You do it then, and if the others say anything—" "That won't worry me, mother." She sighs. Her face is a white gleam in the darkness. "Now you must go to sleep, mother." She does not reply. I get up and wrap my cover round her shoulders. She supports herself on my arm. She is in pain, and so I take her to her room. I stay with her a little while. "And you must get well again, mother, before I come back." "Yes, yes, my child. You ought not to send your things to me, mother. We have plenty to eat out there. You can make much better use of them here." How destitute she lies there in her bed, she, that loves me more than all the world. As I am about to leave, she says hastily, "I have 2 pairs of underpants for you. They are all wool. They will keep you warm. You must not forget to put them in your pack." "Ah, mother, I know what these underpants have cost you in waiting and walking and begging. Ah, mother, mother, how can it be that I must part from you? Who else is there that has any claim on me but you? Here I sit and there you are lying, and we have so much to say that we could never say it. Good night, mother." "Good night, my child." The room is dark. I hear my mother's breathing and the ticking of the clock. Outside the window the wind blows and the chestnut trees rustle. On the landing I stumble over my pack, which lies there already made up, because I have to leave early in the morning. I bite into my pillow. I grasp the iron rods of my bed with my fists. I ought never to have come here. Out there I was indifferent and often hopeless. I will never be able to be so again. I was a soldier, and now I am nothing but an agony for myself, for my mother, for everything that is so comfortless and without end. I ought never to have come on leave. Chapter 7. I already know the camp on the moors. It was here that Himmelsstoss gave Tjaden his education. But now I know hardly anyone here. As ever, all is altered. There are only a few people that I have occasionally met before. I go through the routine mechanically. In the evenings I generally go to the soldiers' home, where the newspapers are laid out, but which I do not read. Still, there is a piano there that I am glad enough to play on. 2 girls are in attendance. One of them is young. The camp is surrounded with high barbed wire fences. If we come back late from the soldiers' home, we have to show passes, but those who are on good terms with the guard can get through, of course. Between the junipers and the birch trees on the moor, we practice company drill each day. It is bearable if one expects nothing better. We advance at a run, fling ourselves down, and our panting breath moves the stalks of the grasses and the flowers of the heather to and fro. Looked at so closely, one sees the fine sand is composed of millions of the tiniest pebbles, as clear as if they had been made in a laboratory. It is strangely inviting to dig one's hands into it. But most beautiful are the woods with their line of birch trees. Their color changes with every minute. Now the stems gleam purest white, and between them, airy and silken, hangs the pastel green of the leaves. The next moment all changes to an opalescent blue as the shivering breezes pass down from the heights and touch the green lightly away. and again, in one place, it deepens almost to black as a cloud passes over the sun. And this shadow moves like a ghost through the dim trunks and passes far out over the moor to the sky. Then the birches stand out again, like gay banners on white poles, with their red and gold patches of autumn-tinted leaves. I often become so lost in the play of soft light and transparent shadow that I almost fail to hear the commands. It is when one is alone that one begins to observe nature and to love her. And here I have not much companionship and do not even desire it. We are too little acquainted with one another to do more than joke a bit and play poker or nap in the evenings. Alongside our camp is the big Russian prison camp. It is separated from us by a wire fence, but in spite of this, the prisoners come across to us. They seem nervous and fearful, though most of them are big fellows with beards. They look like meek, scolded St. Bernard dogs. They slink about our camp and pick over the garbage tins. One can imagine what they find there. With us, food is pretty scarce, and none too good at that. Turnips cut into 6 pieces and boiled in water, and unwashed carrot tops. Mouldy potatoes are titbits, and the chief luxury is a thin rice soup in which float little bits of beef sinew, but these are cut up so small that they take a lot of finding. Everything gets eaten, notwithstanding, and if ever anyone is so well off as not to want all his share, there are a dozen others standing by ready to relieve him of it. Only the dregs that the ladle cannot reach are tipped out and thrown into the garbage tins. Along with that, sometimes go a few turnip peelings, mouldy bread crusts, and all kinds of muck. This thin, miserable, dirty garbage is the objective of the prisoners. They pick it out of the stinking tins greedily and go off with it under their blouses. It is strange to see these enemies of ours so close up. They have faces that make one think, honest peasant faces, broad foreheads, broad noses, broad mouths, broad hands, and thick hair. They ought to be put to threshing, reaping, and apple-picking. They look just as kindly as our own peasants in Friesland. It is distressing to watch their movements, to see them begging for something to eat. They are all rather feeble, for they only get enough nourishment to keep them from starving. Ourselves we have not had sufficient to eat for long enough. They have dysentery. Furtively many of them display the blood-stained tails of their shirts. Their backs, their necks are bent, their knees sag, their heads droop as they stretch out their hands and beg in the few words of German that they know, beg with those soft, deep, musical voices that are like warm stoves and cozy rooms at home. Some men there are who give them a kick so that they fall over, but those are not many. The majority do nothing to them, just ignore them. Occasionally, when they are too grovelling, it makes a man mad, and then he kicks them. If only they would not look at one so. What great misery can be in 2 such small spots, no bigger than a man's thumb, in their eyes? They come over to the camp in the evenings and trade. They exchange whatever they possess for bread. Often they have fair success, because they have very good boots and ours are bad. The leather of their knee boots is wonderfully soft, like suede. The peasants among us who get titbits sent from home can afford to trade. The price of a pair of boots is about 2 or 3 loaves of army bread, or a loaf of bread and a small, tough ham sausage. But most of the Russians have long since parted with whatever things they had. Now they wear only the most pitiful clothing, and try to exchange little carvings and objects that they have made out of shell fragments and copper driving bands. Of course, they don't get much for such things, though they may have taken immense pains with them. They go for a slice or 2 of bread. Our peasants are hard and cunning when they bargain. They hold the piece of bread or sausage right under the nose of the Russian till he grows pale with greed and his eyes bulge, and then he will give anything for it. The peasants wrap up their booty with the utmost solemnity, and then get out their big pocket knives, and slowly and deliberately cut off a slice of bread for themselves from their supply, and with every mouthful take a piece of the good, tough sausage, and so reward themselves with a good feed. It is distressing to watch them take their afternoon meal thus. One would like to crack them over their thick pates. They rarely give anything away. How little we understand one another. I am often on guard over the Russians. In the darkness, one sees their forms move like sick storks, like great birds. They come close up to the wire fence and lean their faces against it. Their fingers hook round the mesh. Often many stand side by side and breathe the wind that comes down from the moors and the forest. They rarely speak, and then only a few words. They are more human and more brotherly towards one another, it seems to me, than we are. But perhaps that is merely because they feel themselves to be more unfortunate than us. Anyway, the war is over so far as they are concerned, but to wait for dysentery is not much of a life either. The territorials who are in charge of them say that they were much more lively at first. They used to have intrigues among themselves, as always happens, and it would often come to blows and knives. But now they are quite apathetic and listless. Most of them do not masturbate anymore. They are so feeble, though occasionally it is so bad that they do it barracks fashion. They stand at the wire fence. Sometimes one goes away, and then another at once takes his place in the line. Most of them are silent. Occasionally one begs a cigarette butt. I see their dark forms, their beards move in the wind. I know nothing of them except that they are prisoners, and that is exactly what troubles me. Their life is obscure and guiltless. If I could know more of them, what their names are, how they live, what they are waiting for, what are their burdens, then my emotion would have an object and might become sympathy. But as it is, I perceive behind them only the suffering of the creature, the awful melancholy of life, and the pitilessness of men. A word of command has made these silent figures our enemies. A word of command might transform them into our friends. At some table, a document is signed by some persons whom none of us knows, and then for years together, that very crime on which formerly the world's condemnation and severest penalty fell becomes our highest aim. But who can draw such a distinction when he looks at these quiet men with their childlike faces and apostles' beards? Any non-commissioned officer is more of an enemy to a recruit, any schoolmaster to a pupil than they are to us. And yet we would shoot at them again, and they at us, if they were free. I am frightened. I dare think this way no more. This way lies the abyss. It is not now the time, but I will not lose these thoughts. I will keep them, shut them away until the war is ended. My heart beats fast. This is the aim, the great, the sole aim, that I have thought of in the trenches, that I have looked for as the only possibility of existence after this annihilation of all human feeling. This is a task that will make life afterward worthy of these hideous years. I take out my cigarettes, break each one in half, and give them to the Russians. They bow to me, and then they light the cigarettes. Now red points glow in every face. They comfort me. It looks as though there were little windows in dark village cottages, saying that behind them are rooms full of peace. The days go by. On a foggy morning, another of the Russians is buried. Almost every day one of them dies. I am on guard during the burial. The prisoners sing a chorale. They sing in parts, and it sounds almost as if there were no voices, but an organ far away on the moor. The burial is quickly over. In the evening they stand again at the wire fence, and the wind comes down to them from the beech woods. The stars are cold. I now know a few of those who speak a little German. There is a musician amongst them. He says he used to be a violinist in Berlin. When he hears that I can play the piano, he fetches his violin and plays. The others sit down and lean their backs against the fence. He stands up and plays. Sometimes he has that absent expression which violinists get when they close their eyes, or again he sways the instrument to the rhythm and smiles across to me. He plays mostly folk songs, and the others hum with him. They are like a country of dark hills that sing far down under the ground. The sound of the violin stands like a slender girl above it and is clear and alone. The voices cease and the violin continues alone. In the night it is so thin it sounds frozen. One must stand close up. It would be much better in a room. Out here it makes a man grow sad. Because I have already had a long leave, I get none on Sundays. So the last Sunday before I go back to the front, my father and eldest sister come over to see me. All day we sit in the soldiers' home. Where else could we go? We don't want to stay in the camp. About midday we go for a walk on the moors. The hours are a torture. We do not know what to talk about, so we speak of my mother's illness. It is now definitely cancer. She is already in the hospital and will be operated on shortly. The doctors hope she will recover, but we have never heard of cancer being cured. Where is she then? I ask. In the Louisa Hospital, says my father. In which class? Third. We must wait till we know what the operation costs. She wanted to be in the third herself. She said that then she would have some company, and besides, it is cheaper. So she is lying there with all those people. If only she could sleep properly. My father nods. His face is broken and full of furrows. My mother has always been sickly, and though she has only gone to the hospital when she has been compelled to, it has cost a great deal of money, and my father's life has been practically given up to it. If only I knew how much the operation costs, says he. Have you not asked? Not directly. I cannot do that. The surgeon might take it amiss, and that would not do. He must operate on mother. Yes, I think bitterly. That's how it is with us, and with all poor people. They don't dare to ask the price, but worry themselves dreadfully beforehand about it. But the others, for whom it is not important, they settle the price first as a matter of course, and the doctor does not take it amiss from them. And the dressings afterwards are so expensive, says my father. Doesn't the Invalids' Fund pay anything toward it then? I ask. Mother has been ill too long. Have you any money at all? He shakes his head. No, but I can do some overtime. I know. He will stand at his desk folding and pasting and cutting until 12 o'clock at night. At 8 o'clock in the evening, he will eat some of the miserable rubbish they get in exchange for their food tickets. Then he will take a powder for his headache and work on. In order to cheer him up a bit, I tell him a few stories, soldiers' jokes and the like, about generals and sergeant majors. Afterwards, I accompany them both to the railway station. They give me a pot of jam and a bag of potato cakes that my mother has made for me. Then they go off, and I return to the camp. In the evening, I spread the jam on the cakes and eat some, but I have no taste for them, so I go out to give them to the Russians. Then it occurs to me that my mother cooked them herself, and that she was probably in pain as she stood before the hot stove. I put the bag back in my pack and take only 2 cakes to the Russians. Chapter 9. We travel for several days. The first aeroplanes appear in the sky. We roll on past transport lines. Guns, guns. The light railway picks us up. I search for my regiment. No one knows exactly where it lies. Somewhere or other I put up for the night. Somewhere or other I receive provisions and a few vague instructions. And so, with my pack and my rifle, I set out again on the way. By the time I come up, they are no longer in that devastated place. I hear we have become one of the flying divisions that are pushed in wherever it is hottest. That does not sound cheerful to me. They tell me of heavy losses that we have been having. I inquire after Kat and Albert. No one knows anything of them. I search farther and wander about here and there. It is a wonderful feeling. One night, and then another, I camp out like a red Indian. Then, at last, I get some definite information, and by the afternoon, I am able to report to the orderly room. The sergeant major detains me there. The company comes back in 2 days' time. There is no object in sending me up now. What was it like on leave? He asks. Pretty good, eh? In parts, I say. Yes, he sighs. Yes, if a man didn't have to come away again. The second half is always rather messed up by that. I loaf around until the company comes back in the early morning, grey, dirty, soured, and gloomy. Then I jump up, push in amongst them, my eyes searching. There is Tjaarden, there is Müller blowing his nose, and there are Kat and Krop. We arrange our sacks of straw side by side. I have an uneasy conscience when I look at them, and yet without any good reason. Before we turn in, I bring out the rest of the potato cakes and jam so that they can have some too. The 2 outer cakes are mouldy. Still, it is possible to eat them. I keep those for myself and give the fresh ones to Kat and Krop. Kat chews and says, "These are from your mother." I nod. "Good," says he. I can tell by the taste. I could almost weep. I can hardly control myself any longer. but it will soon be all right again back here with Kat and Albert. This is where I belong. You've been lucky, whispers Krop to me before we drop off to sleep. They say we are going to Russia. To Russia? It's not much of a war over there. In the distance, the front thunders. The walls of the hut rattle. There's a great deal of polishing being done. We are inspected at every turn. Everything that is torn is exchanged for new. I score a spotless new tunic out of it, and Kat, of course, an entire outfit. A rumor is going round that there may be peace, but the other story is more likely that we are bound for Russia. Still, what do we need new things for in Russia? At last it leaks out. The Kaiser is coming to review us. Hence all the inspections. For 8 whole days one would suppose we were in a base camp. There is so much drill and fuss. Everyone is peevish and touchy. We do not take kindly to all this polishing, much less to parades. Such things exasperate a soldier more than the front line. At last, the moment arrives. We stand up stiff and the Kaiser appears. We are curious to see what he looks like. He stalks along the line, and I am really rather disappointed. Judging from his pictures, I imagined him to be bigger and more powerfully built, and above all, to have a thundering voice. He distributes iron crosses and speaks to this man and to that. Then we march off. Afterwards, we discuss it. Jarden says with astonishment, "So that is the all-highest, and everyone, bar nobody, has to stand up stiff in front of him." He meditates. Hindenburg, too. He has to stand up stiff to him, eh? "Sure," says Kat. Jaden hasn't finished yet. He thinks for a while and then asks, "And would a king have to stand up stiff to an emperor?" None of us is quite sure about it, but we don't suppose so. They are both so exalted that standing strictly to attention is probably not insisted on. "What rot you do hatch out," says Kat. "The main point is that you have to stand stiff yourself." But Jaden is quite fascinated. His otherwise prosy fancy is blowing bubbles. "But look," he announces, "I simply can't believe that an emperor has to go to the latrine the same as I have." "You can bet your boots on it." 4.5 wit makes 7, says Kat. "You've got a maggot in your brain, Jarden. Just you run along to the latrine quick and get your head clear so that you don't talk like a 2-year-old. Jarden disappears. "But what I would like to know," says Albert, "is whether there would not have been a war if the Kaiser had said no." "I'm sure of this much," I interject. "He was against it from the first." "Well, if not him alone, then perhaps if 20 or 30 people in the world had said no." "That's probable," I agree, "but they damn well said yes." "It's queer when one thinks about it," goes on Krop. "We are here to protect our fatherland, and the French are over there to protect their fatherland. Now, who's in the right?" "Perhaps both," say I, without believing it. "Yes, well now," pursues Albert, and I see that he means to drive me into a corner. "But our professors and parsons and newspapers say that we are the only ones that are right, and let's hope so. But the French professors and parsons and newspapers say that the right is on their side. Now what about that?" "That I don't know," I say. "But whichever way it is, there's war all the same, and every month more countries coming in." Jaden reappears. He is still quite excited, and again joins the conversation, wondering just how a war gets started. "Mostly by one country badly offending another," answers Albert with a slight air of superiority. Then Jaden pretends to be obtuse. "A country? I don't follow. A mountain in Germany cannot offend a mountain in France, or a river, or a wood, or a field of wheat." "Are you really as stupid as that, or are you just pulling my leg?" growls Krop. "I don't mean that at all. One people offends the other." "Then I haven't any business here at all," replies Jaden. "I don't feel myself offended." "Well, let me tell you," says Albert sourly. "It doesn't apply to tramps like you." "Then I can be going home right away," retorts Jaden, and we all laugh. "Ach, man, he means the people as a whole, the state," exclaims Müller. "State, state." Jaden snaps his fingers contemptuously. "Gendarmes, police, taxes, that's your state. If that's what you are talking about, no thank you." "That's right," says Kat. You've said something for once, Tjaden. State and home country, there's a big difference. But they go together, insists Krop. Without the state, there wouldn't be any home country. True, but just you consider, almost all of us are simple folk. And in France, too, the majority of men are labourers, workmen, or poor clerks. Now, just why would a French blacksmith or a French shoemaker want to attack us? No, it is merely the rulers. I had never seen a Frenchman before I came here, and it will be just the same with the majority of Frenchmen as regards us. They weren't asked about it any more than we were. Then what exactly is the war for? Asked Jaden. Cat shrugs his shoulders. There must be some people to whom the war is useful. Well, I'm not one of them, grins Jaden. Not you, nor anybody else here. Who are they then? Persists Jaden. It isn't any use to the Kaiser either. He has everything he can want already. I'm not so sure about that, contradicts Cat. He has not had a war up till now, and every full-grown emperor requires at least one war, otherwise he wouldn't become famous. You look in your school books. And generals, too, adds Dietering. They become famous through war. Even more famous than emperors, adds Cat. There are other people back behind there who profit by the war, that's certain, growls Dietering. I think it is more a kind of fever, says Albert. No one in particular wants it, and then all at once there it is. We didn't want the war, the others say the same thing, and yet half the world is in it all the same. But there are more lies told by the other side than by us, say I. Just think of those pamphlets the prisoners have on them, where it says that we eat Belgian children. The fellows who write that ought to go and hang themselves. They are the real culprits. Müller gets up. Anyway, it is better that the war is here instead of in Germany. Just you take a look at the shell holes. True, assents Jaden, but no war at all would be better still. He is quite proud of himself because he has for once scored over us volunteers. And his opinion is quite typical here. One meets it time and again, and there is nothing with which one can properly counter it, because that is the limit of their comprehension of the factors involved. The national feeling of the Tommy resolves itself into this. Here he is. But that is the end of it. Everything else from joining up onwards he criticizes from a practical point of view. Albert lies down on the grass and growls angrily. The best thing is not to talk about the rotten business. It won't make any difference, that's sure, agrees Cat. As for the windfall, we have to return almost all the new things and take back our old rags again. The good ones were merely for the inspection. Instead of going to Russia, we go up the line again. On the way, we pass through a devastated wood with the tree trunks shattered and the ground ploughed up. At several places, there are tremendous craters. Great guns, something's hit that, I say to Cat. Trench mortars, he replies, and then points up at one of the trees. In the branches, dead men are hanging. A naked soldier is squatting in the fork of a tree. He still has his helmet on, otherwise he is entirely unclad. There is only half of him sitting up there, the top half, the legs are missing. What can that mean? I ask. He's been blown out of his clothes, mutters Tjaden. It's funny, says Cat. We have seen that a couple of times now. If a mortar gets you, it blows you almost clean out of your clothes. It's the concussion that does it. I search around, and so it is. Here hang bits of uniform, and somewhere else is plastered a bloody mess that was once a human limb. Over there lies a body with nothing but a piece of the underpants on one leg and the collar of the tunic around its neck. Otherwise it is naked and the clothes are hanging up in the tree. Both arms are missing as though they had been pulled out. I discover one of them 20 yards off in a shrub. The dead man lies on his face. There, where the arm wounds are, the earth is black with blood. Underfoot the leaves are scratched up as though the man had been kicking. That's no joke, Cat, say I. No more is a shell splinter in the belly, he replies, shrugging his shoulders. But don't get tender-hearted, says Jaden. All this can only have happened a little while ago. The blood is still fresh. As everybody we see there is dead, we do not waste any more time, but report the affair at the next stretcher-bearer's post. After all, it is not our business to take these stretcher-bearers' jobs away from them. A patrol has to be sent out to discover just how far the enemy position is advanced. Since my leave, I feel a certain strange attachment to the other fellows, and so I volunteer to go with them. We agree on a plan, slip out through the wire, and then divide and creep forward separately. After a while, I find a shallow shell hole and crawl into it. From here, I peer forward. There is moderate machine gun fire. It sweeps across from all directions, not very heavy, but always sufficient to make one keep down. A parachute star shell opens out. The ground lies stark in the pale light, and then the darkness shuts down again, blacker than ever. In the trenches, we were told there were black troops in front of us. That is nasty. It is hard to see them. They are very good at patrolling, too. And oddly enough, they are often quite stupid. For instance, both Cat and Crop were once able to shoot down a black enemy patrol because the fellows, in their enthusiasm for cigarettes, smoked while they were creeping about. Cat and Albert had simply to aim at the glowing ends of the cigarettes. A bomb or something lands close beside me. I have not heard it coming and am terrified. At the same moment, a senseless fear takes hold on me. Here I am, alone and almost helpless in the dark. Perhaps two other eyes have been watching me for a long while from another shell hole in front of me, and a bomb lies ready to blow me to pieces. I try to pull myself together. It is not my first patrol, and not a particularly risky one. But it is the first since my leave, and besides, the lie of the land is still rather strange to me. I tell myself that my alarm is absurd, that there is probably nothing at all there in the darkness watching me, because otherwise the missile would not have landed so flat. It is in vain. In whirling confusion, my thoughts hum in my brain. I hear the warning voice of my mother. I see the Russians with the flowing beards leaning against the wire fence. I have a bright picture of a canteen with stools, of a cinema in Valenciennes, tormented, terrified. In my imagination, I see the grey, impalpable muzzle of a rifle which moves noiselessly before me whichever way I try to turn my head. The sweat breaks out from every pore. I still continue to lie in my shallow bowl. I look at the time. Only a few minutes have passed. My forehead is wet. The sockets of my eyes are damp. My hands tremble, and I am panting softly. It is nothing but an awful spasm of fear, a simple animal fear of poking out my head and crawling on farther. All my efforts subside like froth into the one desire to be able just to stay lying there. My limbs are glued to the earth. I make a vain attempt. They refuse to come away. I press myself down on the earth. I cannot go forward. I make up my mind to stay lying there. But immediately the wave floods over me anew, a mingled sense of shame, of remorse, and yet, at the same time, of security. I raise myself up a little to take a look around. My eyes burn with staring into the dark. A star shell goes up. I duck down again. I wage a wild and senseless fight. I want to get out of the hollow, and yet slide back into it again. I say, "You must. It is your comrades. It is not any idiotic command." And again, "What does it matter to me? I have only one life to lose." That is the result of all this leave. I reproach myself bitterly. But I cannot convince myself. I become terribly faint. I raise myself slowly and reach forward with my arms, dragging my body after me, and then lie on the edge of the shell hole, half in and half out. There I hear sounds and drop back. Suspicious sounds can be detected clearly despite the noise of the artillery fire. I listen. The sound is behind me. They are our people moving along the trench. Now I hear muffled voices. To judge by the tone, that might be Cat talking. At once a new warmth flows through me. These voices, these few quiet words, these footsteps in the trench behind me recall me at a bound from the terrible loneliness and fear of death by which I had been almost destroyed. They are more to me than life, these voices. They are more than motherliness and more than fear. They are the strongest, most comforting thing there is anywhere. They are the voices of my comrades. I am no longer a shuddering speck of existence, alone in the darkness. I belong to them, and they to me. We all share the same fear and the same life. We are nearer than lovers, in a simpler, a harder way. I could bury my face in them, in these voices, these words that have saved me and will stand by me. Cautiously, I glide out over the edge and snake my way forward. I shuffle along on all fours a bit farther. I keep track of my bearings, look around me, and observe the distribution of the gunfire so as to be able to find my way back. Then I try to get in touch with the others. I am still afraid, but it is an intelligent fear, an extraordinarily heightened caution. The night is windy, and shadows flit hither and thither in the flicker of the gunfire. It reveals too little and too much. Often I peer ahead, but always for nothing. Thus I advance a long way and then turn back in a wide curve. I have not established touch with the others. Every yard nearer our trench fills me with confidence, and with haste, too. It would be bad to get lost now. Then a new fear lays hold of me. I can no longer remember the direction. Quiet, I squat in a shell hole and try to locate myself. More than once it has happened that some fellow has jumped joyfully into a trench only then to discover that it was the wrong one. After a little time I listen again, but still I am not sure. The confusion of shell holes now seems so bewildering that I can no longer tell in my agitation which way I should go. Perhaps I am crawling parallel to the lines, and that might go on forever. So I crawl round once again in a wide curve. These damned rockets. They seem to burn for an hour, and a man cannot make the least movement without bringing the bullets whistling round. But there is nothing for it. I must get out. Falteringly, I work my way farther. I move off over the ground like a crab and rip my hands sorely on the jagged splinters, as sharp as razor blades. Often I think that the sky is becoming lighter on the horizon, but it may be merely my imagination. Then gradually I realize that to crawl in the right direction is a matter of life or death. A shell crashes. Almost immediately, two others, and then it begins in earnest. A bombardment. Machine guns rattle. Now there is nothing for it but to stay lying low. Apparently, an attack is coming. Everywhere the rockets shoot up, unceasing. I lie huddled in a large shell hole, my legs in the water up to the belly. When the attack starts, I will let myself fall into the water, with my face as deep in the mud as I can keep it without suffocating. I must pretend to be dead. Suddenly I hear the barrage lift. At once I slip down into the water, my helmet on the nape of my neck and my mouth just clear so that I can get a breath of air. I lie motionless. Somewhere something clanks, it stamps and stumbles nearer. All my nerves become taut and icy. It clatters over me and away. The first wave has passed. I have but this one shattering thought. What will you do if someone jumps into your shell hole? Swiftly I pull out my little dagger, grasp it fast, and bury it in my hand once again under the mud. If anyone jumps in here, I will go for him. It hammers in my forehead. At once, stab him clean through the throat so that he cannot call out. That's the only way. He will be just as frightened as I am when in terror we fall upon one another. Then I must be first. Now our batteries are firing. A shell lands near me. That makes me savage with fury. All it needs now is to be killed by our own shells. I curse and grind my teeth in the mud. It is a raving frenzy. In the end, all I can do is groan and pray. The crash of the shells bursts in my ears. If our fellows make a counter-raid, I will be saved. I press my head against the earth and listen to the muffled thunder like the explosions of quarrying, and raise it again to listen for the sounds on top. The machine guns rattle. I know our barbed wire entanglements are strong and almost undamaged. Parts of them are charged with a powerful electric current. The rifle fire increases. They have not broken through. They have to retreat. I sink down again, huddled, strained to the uttermost. The banging, the creeping, the clanging becomes audible. One single cry yelling amongst it all. They are raked with fire. The attack is repulsed. Already it has become somewhat lighter. Steps hasten over me. The first, gone. Again, another. The rattle of machine guns becomes an unbroken chain. Just as I am about to turn round a little, something heavy stumbles, and with a crash a body falls over me into the shell hole, slips down, and lies across me. I do not think at all. I make no decision. I strike madly home and feel only how the body suddenly convulses, then becomes limp and collapses. When I recover myself, my hand is sticky and wet. The man gurgles. It sounds to me as though he bellows. Every gasping breath is like a cry, a thunder, but it is only my heart pounding. I want to stop his mouth, stuff it with earth, stab him again. He must be quiet. He is betraying me. Now at last I regain control of myself, but have suddenly become so feeble that I cannot any more lift my hand against him. So I crawl away to the farthest corner and stay there, my eyes glued on him, my hand grasping the knife, ready, if he stirs, to spring at him again. But he won't do so any more. I can hear that already in his gurgling. I can see him indistinctly. I have but one desire, to get away. If it is not soon, it will be too light. It will be difficult enough now. Then, as I try to raise up my head, I see it is impossible already. The machine gun fire so sweeps the ground that I would be shot through and through before I could make one jump. I test it once with my helmet, which I take off and hold up to find out the level of the shots. The next moment, it is knocked out of my hand by a bullet. The fire is sweeping very low over the ground. I am not far enough from the enemy line to escape being picked off by one of the snipers if I attempt to get away. The light increases. Burning. I wait for our attack. My hands are white at the knuckles. I clench them so tightly in my longing for the fire to cease so that my comrades may come. Minute after minute trickles away. I dare not look again at the dark figure in the shell hole. With an effort, I look past it and wait. Wait. The bullets hiss. They make a steel net, never ceasing, never ceasing. Then I notice my bloody hand and suddenly feel nauseated. I take some earth and rub the skin with it. Now my hand is muddy and the blood cannot be seen any more. The fire does not diminish. It is equally heavy from both sides. Our fellows have probably given me up for lost long ago. It is early morning, clear and grey. The gurgling continues. I stop my ears, but soon take my fingers away again, because then I cannot hear the other sound. The figure opposite me moves. I shrink together and involuntarily look at it. Then my eyes remain glued to it. A man with a small, pointed beard lies there. His head is fallen to one side. One arm is half bent. His head rests helplessly upon it. The other hand lies on his chest. It is bloody. He is dead, I say to myself. He must be dead. He doesn't feel anything anymore. It is only the body that is gurgling there. Then the head tries to raise itself. For a moment the groaning becomes louder. His forehead sinks back upon his arm. The man is not dead. He is dying. But he is not dead. I drag myself toward him, hesitate, support myself on my hands, creep a bit farther, wait. Again a terrible journey of 3 yards. A long, a terrible journey. At last I am beside him. Then he opens his eyes. He must have heard me and gazes at me with a look of utter terror. The body lies still, but in the eyes there is such an extraordinary expression of flight that for a moment I think they have power enough to carry the body off with them, hundreds of miles away with one bound. The body is still, perfectly still, without sound. The gurgle has ceased, but the eyes cry out, yell. All the life is gathered together in them for one tremendous effort to flee, gathered together there in a dreadful terror of death, of me. My legs give way, and I drop on my elbows. No, no, I whisper. The eyes follow me. I am powerless to move so long as they are there. Then his hand slips slowly from his breast, only a little bit. It sinks just a few inches, but this movement breaks the power of the eyes. I bend forward, shake my head and whisper, "No, no, no." I raise one hand. I must show him that I want to help him. I stroke his forehead. The eyes shrink back as the hand comes, then they lose their stare. The eyelids droop lower. The tension is past. I open his collar and place his head more comfortably upright. His mouth stands half open. It tries to form words. The lips are dry. My water bottle is not there. I have not brought it with me. But there is water in the mud, down at the bottom of the crater. I climb down, take out my handkerchief, spread it out, push it under, and scoop up the yellow water that strains through into the hollow of my hand. He gulps it down. I fetch some more. Then I unbutton his tunic in order to bandage him if it is possible. In any case, I must do it, so that if the fellows over there capture me, they will see that I wanted to help him, and so will not shoot me. He tries to resist, but his hand is too feeble. The shirt is stuck and will not come away. It is buttoned at the back, so there is nothing for it but to cut it off. I look for the knife and find it again. But when I begin to cut the shirt, the eyes open once more, and the cry is in them again, and the demented expression, so that I must close them, press them shut, and whisper, "I want to help you. Comrade, camarade, camarade, camarade," eagerly repeating the word to make him understand. There are 3 stabs. My field dressing covers them. The blood runs out under it. I press it tighter. There. He groans. That is all I can do. Now we must wait, these hours. The gurgling starts again. But how slowly a man dies. For this I know. He cannot be saved. Indeed, I have tried to tell myself that he will be, but at noon this pretense breaks down and melts before his groans. If only I had not lost my revolver crawling about, I would shoot him. Stab him I cannot. By noon I am groping on the outer limits of reason. Hunger devours me. I could almost weep for something to eat. I cannot struggle against it. Again and again I fetch water for the dying man and drink some myself. This is the first man I have killed with my hands, whom I can see close at hand, whose death is my doing. Cat and Crop and Müller have experienced it already when they have hit someone. It happens to many, in hand-to-hand fighting especially. But every gasp lays my heart bare. This dying man has time with him. He has an invisible dagger with which he stabs me. Time and my thoughts. I would give much if he would but stay alive. It is hard to lie here and to have to see and hear him. In the afternoon, about 3, he is dead. I breathe freely again, but only for a short time. Soon the silence is more unbearable than the groans. I wish the gurgling were there again, gasping, hoarse, now whistling softly and again hoarse and loud. It is mad, what I do. But I must do something. I prop the dead man up again so that he lies comfortably, although he feels nothing any more. I close his eyes. They are brown, his hair is black, and a bit curly at the sides. The mouth is full and soft beneath his moustache. The nose is slightly arched, the skin brownish. It is now not so pale as it was before, when he was still alive. For a moment the face seems almost healthy. Then it collapses suddenly into the strange face of the dead that I have so often seen, strange faces, all alike. No doubt his wife still thinks of him. She does not know what has happened. He looks as if he would often have written to her. She will still be getting mail from him. Tomorrow, in a week's time, perhaps even a stray letter a month hence. She will read it, and in it he will be speaking to her. My state is getting worse. I can no longer control my thoughts. What would his wife look like? Like the little brunette on the other side of the canal. Does she belong to me now? Perhaps by this act she becomes mine. I wish Cantorek was sitting here beside me. If my mother could see me. The dead man might have had 30 more years of life, if only I had impressed the way back to our trench more sharply on my memory. If only he had run 2 yards farther to the left, he might now be sitting in the trench over there and writing a fresh letter to his wife. But I will get no further that way, for that is the fate of all of us. If Kemmerik's leg had been 6 inches to the right, if High Westhus had bent his back 3 inches further forward. The silence spreads. I talk and must talk. So I speak to him and say to him, "Comrade, I did not want to kill you. If you jumped in here again, I would not do it, if you would be sensible too. But you were only an idea to me before, an abstraction that lived in my mind and called forth its appropriate response. It was that abstraction I stabbed. But now, for the first time, I see you are a man like me. I thought of your hand grenades, of your bayonet, of your rifle. Now I see your wife and your face and our fellowship. Forgive me, comrade. We always see it too late. Why do they never tell us that you are just poor devils like us? that your mothers are just as anxious as ours, and that we have the same fear of death, and the same dying, and the same agony. Forgive me, comrade. How could you be my enemy? If we threw away these rifles and this uniform, you could be my brother just like Cat and Albert. Take 20 years of my life, comrade, and stand up. Take more, for I do not know what I can even attempt to do with it now. It is quiet. The front is still except for the crackle of rifle fire. The bullets rain over. They are not fired haphazard, but shrewdly aimed from all sides. I cannot get out. I will write to your wife, I say hastily to the dead man. I will write to her. She must hear it from me. I will tell her everything I have told you. She shall not suffer. I will help her, and your parents too, and your child. His tunic is half open. The pocketbook is easy to find, but I hesitate to open it. In it is the book with his name. So long as I do not know his name, perhaps I may still forget him. Time will obliterate it, this picture. But his name, it is a nail that will be hammered into me and never come out again. It has the power to recall this forever. It will always come back and stand before me. Irresolutely, I take the wallet in my hand. It slips out of my hand and falls open. Some pictures and letters drop out. I gather them up and want to put them back again, but the strain I am under, the uncertainty, the hunger, the danger, these hours with the dead man have confused me. I want to hasten the relief, to intensify and to end the torture, as one strikes an unendurably painful hand against the trunk of a tree, regardless of everything. There are portraits of a woman and a little girl, small amateur photographs taken against an ivy-clad wall. Along with them are letters. I take them out and try to read them. Most of it I do not understand. It is so hard to decipher, and I know scarcely any French. But each word I translate pierces me like a shot in the chest, like a stab in the chest. My brain is taxed beyond endurance, but I realize this much, that I will never dare to write to these people as I intended. Impossible. I look at the portraits once more. They are clearly not rich people. I might send them money anonymously if I earn anything later on. I seize upon that. It is at least something to hold on to. This dead man is bound up with my life. Therefore I must do everything, promise everything, in order to save myself. I swear blindly that I mean to live only for his sake and his family. With wet lips I try to placate him, and deep down in me lies the hope that I may buy myself off in this way, and perhaps even yet get out of this. It is a little stratagem. If only I am allowed to escape, then I will see to it. So I open the book and read slowly. Gérard Duval, compositor. With the dead man's pencil, I write the address on an envelope, then swiftly thrust everything back into his tunic. I have killed the printer, Gérard Duval. I must be a printer, I think confusedly. Be a printer, printer. By afternoon I am calmer. My fear was groundless. The name troubles me no more. The madness passes. Comrade, I say to the dead man, but I say it calmly. Today you, tomorrow me. But if I come out of it, comrade, I will fight against this that has struck us both down. From you, taken life, and from me, life also. I promise you, comrade, it shall never happen again. The sun strikes low. I am stupefied with exhaustion and hunger. Yesterday is like a fog to me. There is no hope of getting out of this yet. I fall into a doze and do not at first realize that evening is approaching. The twilight comes. It seems to me to come quickly now. 1 hour more. If it were summer, it would be 3 hours more. 1 hour more. Now suddenly I begin to tremble. Something might happen in the interval. I think no more of the dead man. He is of no consequence to me now. With one bound, the lust to live flares up again, and everything that has filled my thoughts goes down before it. Now, merely to avert any ill luck, I babble mechanically. I will fulfill everything I have promised you. But already I know that I shall not do so. Suddenly it occurs to me that my own comrades may fire on me as I creep up. They do not know I am coming. I will call out as soon as I can so that they will recognize me. I will stay lying in front of the trench until they answer me. The first star. The front remains quiet. I breathe deeply and talk to myself in my excitement. No foolishness now, Paul. Quiet, Paul, quiet. Then you will be saved, Paul. When I use my Christian name, it works as though someone else spoke to me. It has more power. The darkness grows. My excitement subsides. I wait cautiously until the first rocket goes up. Then I crawl out of the shell hole. I have forgotten the dead man. Before me lies the oncoming night and the pale, gleaming field. I fix my eye on a shell hole. The moment the light dies, I scurry over into it, grope farther, spring into the next, duck down, scramble onward. I come nearer. There, by the light of a rocket, I see something move in the wire. Then it stiffens and lies still. Next time I see it again, yes, they are men from our trench. But I am suspicious until I recognize our helmets. Then I call, and immediately an answer rings out. My name. Paul. Paul. I call again in answer. It is Kat and Albert who have come out with a stretcher to look for me. Are you wounded? No. No. We drop into the trench. I ask for something to eat and wolf it down. Müller gives me a cigarette. In a few words, I tell what happened. There is nothing new about it. It happens quite often. The night attack is the only unusual feature of the business. In Russia, Kat once lay for 2 days behind the enemy lines before he could make his way back. I do not mention the dead printer, but by next morning I can keep it to myself no longer. I must tell Kat and Albert. They both try to calm me. You can't do anything about it. What else could you have done? That is what you are here for. I listen to them and feel comforted, reassured by their presence. It was mere drivelling nonsense that I talked out there in the shell hole. Look there, for instance, points Kat. On the fire step stand some snipers. They rest their rifles with telescopic sights on the parapet and watch the enemy front. Once and again, a shot cracks out. Then we hear the cry, "That's found a billet!" Did you see how he leapt in the air? Sergeant Ulrich turns round proudly and scores his point. He heads the shooting list for today with 3 unquestionable hits. What do you say to that? Asks Kat. I nod. If he keeps that up, he will get a little coloured bird for his buttonhole by this evening, says Albert. Or rather, he will soon be made acting sergeant major, says Kat. We look at one another. I would not do it, I say. All the same, says Kat. It's very good for you to see it just now. Sergeant Ulrich returns to the fire step. The muzzle of his rifle searches to and fro. You don't need to lose any more sleep over your affair, nods Albert. And now I hardly understand it myself any more. It was only because I had to lie there with him so long, I say. After all, war is war. Ulrich's rifle cracks out sharp and dry. Chapter 10. ... We have dropped in for a good job. 8 of us have to guard a village that has been abandoned because it is being shelled too heavily. In particular, we have to watch the supply dump as that is not yet empty. We are supposed to provision ourselves from the same store. We are just the right people for that. Kat, Albert, Müller, Tjarden, Dietering, our whole gang is there. Hai is dead, though. But we are mighty lucky all the same. All the other squads have had more casualties than we have. We select, as a dugout, a reinforced concrete cellar into which steps lead down from above. The entrance is protected by a separate concrete wall. Now we develop an immense industry. This is an opportunity not only to stretch one's legs, but to stretch one's soul also. We make the best use of such opportunities. The war is too desperate to allow us to be sentimental for long. That is only possible so long as things are not going too badly. After all, we cannot afford to be anything but matter-of-fact. So matter-of-fact indeed that I often shudder when a thought from the days before the war comes momentarily into my head. But it does not stay long. We have to take things as lightly as we can, so we make the most of every opportunity, and nonsense stands stark and immediate beside horror. It cannot be otherwise. That is how we hearten ourselves. So we zealously set to work to create an idyll of eating and sleeping, of course. The floor is first covered with mattresses which we haul in from the houses. Even a soldier's behind likes to sit soft. Only in the middle of the floor is there any clear space. Then we furnish ourselves with blankets and eiderdowns, luxurious soft affairs. There is plenty of everything to be had in the town. Albert and I find a mahogany bed which can be taken to pieces, with a sky of blue silk and a lace coverlet. We sweat like monkeys moving it in, but a man cannot let a thing like that slip, and it would certainly be shot to pieces in a day or two. Kat and I do a little patrolling through the houses. In very short time we have collected a dozen eggs and 2 pounds of fairly fresh butter. Suddenly there is a crash in the drawing room, and an iron stove hurtles through the wall past us and on, a yard from us, out through the wall behind. 2 holes. It comes from the house opposite where a shell has just landed. "The swine," grimaces Kat, and we continue our search. All at once we prick up our ears, hurry across, and suddenly stand petrified. There, running up and down in a little sty, are 2 live-sucking pigs. We rub our eyes and look once again to make certain. Yes, they are still there. We seize hold of them, no doubt about it, 2 real young pigs. This will make a grand feed. About 20 yards from our dugout there is a small house that was used as an officer's billet. In the kitchen is an immense fireplace with 2 ranges, pots, pans, and kettles. Everything, even to a stack of small chopped wood in an outhouse, a regular cook's paradise. 2 of our fellows have been out in the fields all the morning, hunting for potatoes, carrots, and green peas. We are quite uppish and sniff at the tinned stuff in the supply dump. We want fresh vegetables. In the dining room there are already 2 heads of cauliflower. The sucking pigs are slaughtered. Kat sees to them. We want to make potato cakes to go with the roast, but we cannot find a grater for the potatoes. However, that difficulty is soon got over. With a nail we punch a lot of holes in a pot lid, and there we have a grater. 3 fellows put on thick gloves to protect their fingers against the grater, 2 others peel the potatoes, and the business gets going. Kat samples the sucking pigs, the carrots, the peas, and the cauliflower. He even mixes a white sauce for the cauliflower. I fry the pancakes, 4 at a time. After 10 minutes, I get the knack of tossing the pan so that the pancakes which are done on the one side sail up, turn in the air, and are caught again as they come down. The sucking pigs are baked whole. We all stand round them as before an altar. In the meantime, we receive visitors, a couple of wireless men, who are generously invited to the feed. They sit in the living room where there is a piano. One of them plays, the other sings "An der Weser." He sings feelingly, but with a rather Saxon accent. All the same, it moves us as we stand at the fireplace preparing the good things. Then we begin to realize that we are in for trouble. The observation balloons have spotted the smoke from our chimney, and the shells start to drop on us. They are those damned spraying little daisy cutters that make only a small hole and scatter widely close to the ground. They keep dropping closer and closer all round us. Still, we cannot leave the grub in the lurch. A couple of splinters whiz through the top of the kitchen window. The roast is already cooked, but frying the pancakes is getting difficult. The explosions come so fast that the splinters strike often and oftener against the wall of the house and sweep in through the window. Whenever I hear a shell coming, I drop down on one knee with the pan and the pancakes and duck behind the wall of the window. Immediately afterwards, I am up again and going on with the frying. The Saxons stop singing. A fragment has smashed into the piano. At last, everything is ready, and we organize the transport of it back to the dugout. After the next explosion, 2 men dash across the 50 yards to the dugout with the pots of vegetables. We see them disappear. The next shot. Everyone ducks, and then 2 more trot off, each with a big can of finest grade coffee, and reach the dugout before the next explosion. Then Cat and Crop seize the masterpiece, the big dish with the brown roasted sucking pigs. A screech, a knee bend, and away they race over the 50 yards of open country. I stay to finish frying my last 4 pancakes. Twice I have to drop on the floor. After all, it means 4 pancakes more, and they are my favorite dish. Then I grab the plate with the great pile of cakes and squeeze myself behind the house door. A hiss, a crash, and I gallop off with the plate clamped against my chest with both hands. I am almost in. I run like a deer, sweep round the wall. Fragments clatter against the concrete. I tumble down the cellar steps. My elbows are skinned, but I have not lost a single pancake, nor even broken the plate. About 2 o'clock we start the meal. It lasts till 6. We drink coffee until 7:30, officers' coffee from the supply dump, and smoke officers' cigars and cigarettes, also from the supply dump. Punctually at 7:30 we begin the evening meal. About 10 o'clock we throw the bones of the sucking pigs outside the door. Then there is cognac and rum, also from the blessed supply dump, and once again long fat cigars with belly bands. Jaden suggests that it lacks only one thing: girls from an officer's brothel. Late in the evening we hear mewing. A little grey cat sits in the entrance. We entice it in and give it something to eat, and that wakes up our own appetites once more. Still chewing, we lie down to sleep. But the night is bad. We have eaten too much fat. Fresh baby pig is very griping to the bowels. There is an everlasting coming and going in the dugout. 2, 3 men with their pants down are always sitting about outside and cursing. I have been out 9 times myself. About 4 o'clock in the morning we reach a record. All 11 men, guards and visitors, are squatting outside. Burning houses stand out like torches against the night. Shells lumber across and crash down. Munition columns tear along the street. On one side, the supply dump has been ripped open. In spite of all the flying fragments, the drivers of the munition columns pour in like a swarm of bees and pounce on the bread. We let them have their own way. If we said anything, it would only mean a good hiding for us. So we go differently about it. We explain that we are the guard, and so know our way about. We get hold of the tinned stuff and exchange it for things we are short of. What does it matter anyhow? In a while it will all be blown to pieces. For ourselves, we take some chocolate from the depot and eat it in slabs. Cat says it is good for loose bowels. Almost a fortnight passes thus in eating, drinking, and roaming about. No one disturbs us. The town gradually vanishes under the shells, and we lead a charmed life. So long as any part of the supply dump still stands, we don't worry. We desire nothing better than to stay here till the end of the war. Jarden has become so fastidious that he only half smokes his cigars. With his nose in the air, he explains to us that he was brought up that way, and Cat is most cheerful. In the morning, his first call is, "Emile, bring in the caviar and coffee." We put on extraordinary airs. Every man treats the other as his valet, bounces him and gives him orders. There is something itching under my foot. "Crop, my man, catch that louse at once," says Lear, poking out his leg at him like a ballet girl, and Albert drags him up the stairs by the foot. "Jarden!" "What?" "Stand at ease, Jarden. And what's more, don't say what, say, 'Yes, sir.' Now, Jarden!" Jarden retorts in the well-known phrase from Goethe's Götz von Berlichingen, with which he is always very free. After 8 more days, we receive orders to go back. The palmy days are over. 2 big motor lorries take us away. They are stacked high with planks. Nevertheless, Albert and I erect on top our 4-poster bed, complete with blue silk canopy, mattress, and 2 lace coverlets. And behind it, at the head, is stowed a bag full of choice edibles. We often dip into it, and the tough ham sausages, the tins of liver sausages, the conserves, the boxes of cigarettes, rejoice our hearts. Each man has a bag to himself. Crop and I have rescued 2 big red armchairs as well. They stand inside the bed, and we sprawl back in them as in a theatre box. Above us swells the silken cover like a baldaquin. Each man has a long cigar in his mouth, and thus from aloft we survey the scene. Between us stands a parrot cage that we found for the cat. She is coming with us and lies in the cage before her saucer of meat and purrs. Slowly the lorries roll down the road. We sing. Behind us the shells are sending up fountains from the now utterly abandoned town. A few days later we are sent out to evacuate a village. On the way we meet the fleeing inhabitants, trundling their goods and chattels along with them in wheelbarrows, perambulators, and on their backs. Their figures are bent, their faces full of grief, despair, haste, and resignation. The children hold on to their mother's hands, and often an older girl leads the little ones who stumble onward and are forever looking back. A few carry miserable-looking dolls. All are silent as they pass us by. We are marching in column. The French do not fire on a town in which there are still inhabitants. But a few minutes later the air screams, the earth heaves, cries ring out. A shell has landed among the rear squad. We scatter and fling ourselves down on the ground, but at that moment I feel the instinctive alertness leave me, which hitherto has always made me do unconsciously the right thing under fire. The thought leaps up with a terrible, throttling fear. You are lost, and the next moment a blow sweeps like a whip over my left leg. I hear Albert cry out. He is beside me. "Quick! Up, Albert!" I yell, for we are lying unsheltered in the open field. He staggers up and runs. I keep beside him. We have to get over a hedge. It is higher than we are. Crop seizes a branch. I heave him up by the leg. He cries out. I give him a swing, and he flies over. With one leap, I follow him and fall into a ditch that lies behind the hedge. Our faces are smothered with duckweed and mud, but the cover is good, so we wade in up to our necks. Whenever a shell whistles, we duck our heads under the water. After we have done this a dozen times, I am exhausted. "Let's get away, or I'll fall in and drown," groans Albert. "Where has it got you?" I ask him. "In the knee, I think." "Can you run?" "I think." "Then out." We make for the ditch beside the road, and stooping, run along it. The shelling follows us. The road leads toward the munition dump. If that goes up, there won't be a man of us with his head left on his shoulders. So we change our plan and run diagonally across country. Albert begins to drag. "You go, I'll come on after," he says, and throws himself down. I seize him by the arm and shake him. "Up, Albert. If once you lie down, you'll never get any farther. Quick, I'll hold you up." At last we reach a small dugout. Crop pitches in, and I bandage him up. The shot is just a little above his knee. Then I take a look at myself. My trousers are bloody, and my arm too. Albert binds up my wounds with his field dressing. Already he is no longer able to move his leg, and we both wonder how we managed to get this far. Fear alone made it possible. We would have run even if our feet had been shot off. We would have run on the stumps. I can still crawl a little. I call out to a passing ambulance wagon, which picks us up. It is full of wounded. There is an army medical lance corporal with it who sticks an anti-tetanus needle into our chests. At the dressing station, we arrange matters so that we lie side by side. They give us a thin soup, which we spoon down greedily and scornfully because we are accustomed to better times, but are hungry all the same. "Now for home, Albert," I say. "Let's hope so," he replies. "I only wish I knew what I've got." The pain increases. The bandages burn like fire. We drink and drink, one glass of water after another. "How far above the knee am I hit?" asks Crop. "At least 4 inches, Albert," I answer. Actually, it is perhaps 1. "I've made up my mind," he says after a while. "If they take off my leg, I'll put an end to it. I won't go through life as a cripple." So we lie there with our thoughts and wait. In the evening we are hauled on to the chopping block. I am frightened and think quickly what I ought to do, for everyone knows that the surgeons in the dressing stations amputate on the slightest provocation, under the great pressure of business that is much simpler than complicated patching. I think of Kemmerich. Whatever happens, I will not let them chloroform me, even if I have to crack a couple of their skulls. It is all right. The surgeon pokes around in the wound, and a blackness comes before my eyes. "Don't carry on so," he says gruffly, and hacks away. The instruments gleam in the bright light like malevolent animals. The pain is insufferable. 2 orderlies hold my arms fast, but I break loose with one of them and try to crash into the surgeon's spectacles just as he notices and springs back. "Chloroform the scoundrel," he roars madly. Then I become quiet. "Pardon me, Herr Doctor. I will keep still, but do not chloroform me." "Well now," he cackles and takes up his instrument again. He is a fair fellow, not more than 30 years old, with scars and disgusting gold spectacles. Now I see that he is tormenting me. He is merely raking about in the wound and looking up surreptitiously at me over his glasses. My hands squeeze around the grips. I'll kick the bucket before he will get a squeak out of me. He has fished out a piece of shell and tosses it to me. Apparently, he is pleased at my self-control, for he seems to be more considerate of me now and says, "Tomorrow you'll be off home." Then I am put in plaster. When I am back again with Crop, I tell him that apparently a hospital train comes in tomorrow morning. "We must work the Army Medical Sergeant Major so that we can keep together, Albert." I manage to slip the Sergeant Major 2 of my cigars with belly bands and then tip the word to him. He smells the cigars and says, "Have you got any more of them?" "Another good handful," I say, "and my comrade," I point to Crop, "he has some as well. We might possibly be glad to hand them to you out of the window of the hospital train in the morning." He understands, of course, smells them once again, and says, "Done." We cannot get a minute's sleep all night. 7 fellows die in our ward. One of them sings hymns in a high crack tenor before he begins to gurgle. Another has crept out of his bed to the window. He lies in front of it as though he wants to look out for the last time. Our stretchers stand on the platform. We wait for the train. It rains and the station has no roof. Our covers are thin. We have waited already 2 hours. The Sergeant Major looks after us like a mother. Although I feel pretty bad, I do not let our scheme out of my mind. Occasionally, I let him see the packet and give him 1 cigar in advance. In exchange, the Sergeant Major covers us over with a waterproof sheet. "Albert, old man," I suddenly bethink myself, "our 4-poster and the cat." "And the club chairs?" he adds. "Yes, the club chairs with red plush. In the evening we used to sit in them like lords, and intended later on to let them out by the hour. 1 cigarette per hour. It might have turned into a regular business. A real good living. And our bags of grub too, Albert." We grow melancholy. We might have made some use of the things. If only the train left 1 day later, Cat would be sure to find us and bring us the stuff. What damned hard luck. In our bellies there is gruel, mean hospital stuff, and in our bags roast pork. But we are so weak that we cannot work up any more excitement about it. The stretchers are sopping wet by the time the train arrives in the morning. The Sergeant Major sees to it that we are put in the same car. There is a crowd of Red Cross nurses. Crop is stowed in below. I am lifted up and put into the bed above him. "Good God!" I exclaim suddenly. "What is it?" asks the sister. I cast a glance at the bed. It is covered with clean, snow-white linen that even has the marks of the iron still on it. And my shirt has gone 6 weeks without being washed and is terribly muddy. "Can't you get in by yourself?" asks the sister gently. "Why, yes," I say in a sweat, "but take off the bed cover first." "What for?" I feel like a pig. "Must I get in there?" "It will get—" I hesitate. "A little bit dirty," she suggests helpfully. "That doesn't matter. We will wash it again afterwards." "No, no, not that," I say excitedly. I am not equal to such overwhelming refinement. "When you have been lying out there in the trenches, surely we can wash a sheet," she goes on. I look at her. She is young and crisp, spotless and neat, like everything here. A man cannot realize that it isn't for officers only, and feels himself strange and in some way even alarmed. All the same, the woman is a tormentor. She's going to force me to say it. "It is only—" I try again. Surely she must know what I mean. "What is it then?" "Because of the lice," I bawl out at last. She laughs. "Well, they must have a good day for once, too." Now I don't care any more. I scramble into bed and pull up the covers. A hand gropes over the bed cover. The Sergeant Major. He goes off with the cigars. An hour later, we notice that we are moving. At night, I cannot sleep. Crop is restless too. The train rides easily over the rails. I cannot realize it all yet. A bed, a train, home. "Albert," I whisper. "Yes." "Do you know where the latrine is?" Over to the right of the door, I think. I'm going to have a look. It is dark. I grope for the edge of the bed and cautiously try to slide down. But my foot finds no support. I begin to slip. The plaster leg is no help, and with a crash, I lie on the floor. "Damn!" I say. "Have you bumped yourself?" asks Crop. "You could hear that well enough for yourself," I growl. "My head." A door opens in the rear of the car. The sister comes with a light and looks at me. He has fallen out of bed. She feels my pulse and smooths my forehead. "You haven't any fever, though?" "No, I agree." "Have you been dreaming, then?" she asks. "Perhaps," I evade. The interrogation starts again. She looks at me with her clear eyes, and the more wonderful and sweet she is, the less am I able to tell her what I want. I am lifted up into bed again. That will be all right. As soon as she goes, I must try to climb down again. If she were an old woman, it might be easier to say what a man wants, but she is so very young, at the most 25. It can't be done. I cannot possibly tell her. Then Albert comes to my rescue. He is not bashful. It makes no difference to him who is upset. He calls to the sister. She turns round. "Sister," he wants. But no more does Albert know how to express it modestly and decently. Out there we say it in a single word, but here, to such a lady. All at once he remembers his school days and finishes hastily. "He wants to leave the room, sister." "Ah," says the sister, "but he shouldn't climb out of his bed with his plaster bandage." "What do you want, then?" she says, turning to me. I am in mortal terror at this new turn, for I haven't any idea what the things are called professionally. She comes to my help. "Little or big?" This shocking business. I sweat like a pig and say shyly, "Well, only quite a little one." At any rate, it produces the effect. I get a bottle. After a few hours, I am no longer the only one, and by morning we are quite accustomed to it and ask for what we want without any false modesty. The train travels slowly. Sometimes it halts and the dead are unloaded. It halts often. Albert is feverish. I feel miserable and have a good deal of pain, but the worst of it is that apparently there are still lice under the plaster bandage. They itch terribly, and I cannot scratch myself. We sleep through the days. The country glides quietly past the window. The third night we reach Herbstall. I hear from the sister that Albert is to be put off at the next station because of his fever. "How far does the train go?" I ask. "To Cologne." "Albert," I say. "We stick together, you see." On the sister's next round, I hold my breath and press it up into my head. My face swells and turns red. She stops. "Are you in pain?" "Yes," I groan, all of a sudden. She gives me a thermometer and goes on. I would not have been under Cat's tuition if I did not know what to do now. These army thermometers are not made for old soldiers. All one has to do is to drive the quicksilver up, and then it stays there without falling again. I stick the thermometer under my arm at a slant and flip it steadily with my forefinger. Then I give it a shake. I send it up to 100.2 degrees. But that is not enough. A match, held cautiously near to it, brings it up to 101.6 degrees. As the sister comes back, I blow myself out, breathe in short gasps, goggle at her with vacant eyes, toss about restlessly, and mutter in a whisper, "I can't bear it any longer." She notes me down on a slip of paper. I know perfectly well my plaster bandage will not be reopened if it can be avoided. Albert and I are put off together. We are in the same room in a Catholic hospital. That is a piece of luck. The Catholic infirmaries are noted for their good treatment and good food. The hospital has been filled up from our train. There are a great many bad cases amongst them. We do not get examined today because there are too few surgeons. The flat trolleys with the rubber wheels pass continually along the corridor, and always with someone stretched at full length upon them. A damnable position, stretched out at full length like that. The only time it is good is when one is asleep. The night is very disturbed. No one can sleep. Toward morning we doze a little. I wake up just as it grows light. The door stands open, and I hear voices from the corridor. The others wake up too. One fellow, who has been there a couple of days, already explains it to us. Up here in the corridor every morning, the sisters say prayers. They call it morning devotion. And so, that you can get your share, they leave the door open. No doubt it is well meant, but it gives us aches in our head and bones. Such an absurdity, I say, just when a man dropped off to sleep. All the light cases are up here. That's why they do it here, he replies. Albert groans. I get furious and call out, "Be quiet out there." A minute later, a sister appears. In her black and white dress, she looks like a beautiful tea cozy. "Shut the door, will you, sister?" says someone. "We are saying prayers. That is why the door is open," she responds. "But we want to go on sleeping." Prayer is better than sleep. She stands there and smiles innocently. And it is 7 o'clock already. Albert groans again. "Shut the door," I snort. She is quite disconcerted. Apparently, she cannot understand. "But we are saying prayers for you too." "Shut the door anyway." She disappears, leaving the door open. The intoning of the litany proceeds. I feel savage and say, "I'm going to count up to 3. If it doesn't stop before then, I'll let something fly." "Me too," says another. I count up to 5. Then I take hold of a bottle, aim, and heave it through the door into the corridor. It smashes into 1,000 pieces. The praying stops. A swarm of sisters appear and reproach us in concert. "Shut the door!" we yell. They withdraw. The little one who came first is the last to go. "Heathen," she chirps, but shuts the door all the same. We have won. At noon, the hospital inspector arrives and abuses us. He threatens us with clink and all the rest of it. But a hospital inspector is just the same as a commissariat inspector, or anyone else who wears a long dagger and shoulder straps, but is really a clerk, and is never considered even by a recruit as a real officer. So we let him talk. What can they do to us anyway? "Who threw the bottle?" he asks. Before I can think whether I should report myself, someone says, "I did." A man with a bristling beard sits up. Everyone is excited. Why should he report himself? "You?" "Yes. I was annoyed because we were waked up unnecessarily and lost my senses so that I did not know what I was doing." He talks like a book. "What is your name?" "Reinforcement Reservist Joseph Hammaker." The inspector departs. We are all curious. "But why did you say you did it? It wasn't you at all." He grins. "That doesn't matter. I have a shooting license." Then, of course, we all understand. Whoever has a shooting license can do just whatever he pleases. "Yes," he explains, "I got a crack in the head, and they presented me with a certificate to say that I was periodically not responsible for my actions. Ever since then, I've had a grand time. No one dares to annoy me, and nobody does anything to me. I reported myself because the shot amused me. If they open the door again tomorrow, we will pitch another." We are overjoyed. With Joseph Hammaker in our midst, we can now risk anything. Then come the soundless, flat trolleys to take us away. The bandages are stuck fast. We bellow like steers. There are 8 men in our room. Peter, a curly, black-haired fellow, has the worst injury, a severe lung wound. Franz Wechter, alongside him, has a shot in the arm, which didn't look too bad at first. But the third night he calls out to us, telling us to ring. He thinks he has a hemorrhage. I ring loudly. The night sister does not come. We have been making rather heavy demands on her during the night, because we have all been freshly bandaged, and so have a good deal of pain. One wants his leg placed so, another so, a third wants water, a fourth wants her to shake up his pillow. In the end, the buxom old body grumbled bad-temperedly and slammed the doors. Now, no doubt she thinks it is something of the same sort, and so she is not coming. We wait. Then Franz says, "Ring again." I do so. Still, she does not put in an appearance. In our wing, there is only one night sister. Perhaps she has something to do in one of the other rooms. "Franz, are you quite sure you are bleeding?" I ask. "Otherwise, we shall be getting cursed again." "The bandage is wet. Can't anybody make a light?" "That cannot be done either. The switch is by the door and none of us can stand up." I hold my thumb against the button of the bell till it becomes numb. Perhaps the sister has fallen asleep. They certainly have a great deal to do and are all overworked day after day, and added to that is the everlasting praying. Should we smash a bottle? Asks Joseph Hammaker of the shooting license. She wouldn't hear that any more than the bell. At last the door opens. The old lady appears, mumbling. When she perceives Franz's trouble, she begins to bustle and says, "Why did not someone say I was wanted? We did ring, and none of us here can walk. He has been bleeding badly, and she binds him up. In the morning we look at his face. It has become sharp and yellow, whereas the evening before he looked almost healthy. Now a sister comes oftener. Sometimes there are Red Cross voluntary aid sisters. They are pleasant, but often rather unskilled. They frequently give us pain when remaking our beds, and then are so frightened that they hurt us still more. The nuns are more reliable. They know how they must take hold of us, but we would be more pleased if they were somewhat more cheerful. A few of them have real spirit. They are superb. There is no one who would not do anything for Sister Libertine, this marvelous sister, who spreads good cheer through the whole wing, even when she can only be seen in the distance. And there are others like her. We would go through fire for her. A man cannot really complain. Here he is treated by the nuns exactly like a civilian. On the other hand, just to think of a garrison hospital gives a man the creeps. Franz Wachter does not regain his strength. One day he is taken away and does not come back. Joseph Hammaker knows all about it. We shan't see him again. They have put him in the dead room. What do you mean, dead room? Asked Kropp. Well, dying room. What is that, then? A little room at the corner of the building. Whoever is about to kick the bucket is put in there. There are 2 beds in it. It is generally called the dying room. But what do they do that for? They don't have so much work to do afterwards. It is more convenient, too, because it lies right beside the lift to the mortuary. Perhaps also they do it for the sake of the others, so that no one in the ward dies in sympathy. And they can look after him better, too, if he is by himself. But what about him? Joseph shrugs his shoulders. Usually he doesn't take much notice anymore. Does everybody know about it, then? Anyone who has been here long enough knows, of course. In the afternoon, Franz Wachter's bed has a fresh occupant. A couple of days later, they take the new man away, too. Joseph makes a significant gesture. We see many come and go. Often relatives sit by the beds and weep or talk softly and awkwardly. One old woman will not go away, but she cannot stay there the whole night through. Another morning she comes very early, but not early enough, for as she goes up to the bed, someone else is in it already. She has to go to the mortuary. The apples that she has brought with her she gives to us. And then little Peter begins to get worse. His temperature chart looks bad, and one day the flat trolley stands beside his bed. "Where to?" he asks. "To the bandaging ward." He is lifted out, but the sister makes the mistake of removing his tunic from the hook and putting it on the trolley too, so that she should not have to make 2 journeys. Peter understands immediately and tries to roll off the trolley. "I'm stopping here." They push him back. He cries out feebly with his shattered lung, "I won't go to the dying room." "But we are going to the bandaging ward." "Then what do you want my tunic for?" He can speak no more. Hoarse, agitated, he whispers, "Stopping here." They do not answer, but wheel him out. At the door he tries to raise himself up. His black curly head sways. His eyes are full of tears. "I will come back again. I will come back again," he cries. The door shuts. We are all excited, but we say nothing. At last, Joseph says, "Many a man has said that. Once a man is in there, he never comes through. I am operated on and vomit for 2 days. My bones will not grow together, so the surgeon's secretary says. And other fellows have grown crooked. His are broken again. It is disgusting. Among our new arrivals there are 2 young soldiers with flat feet. The chief surgeon discovers them on his rounds and is overjoyed. "We'll soon put that right," he tells them. "We will just do a small operation, and then you will have perfectly sound feet. Enter them down, sister." As soon as he is gone, Joseph, who knows everything, warns them. Don't you let him operate on you. That is a special scientific stunt of the old boy's. He goes absolutely crazy whenever he can get hold of anyone to do it on. He operates on you for flat feet, and there's no mistake. You don't have them anymore. You have club feet instead, and have to walk all the rest of your life on sticks. What should a man do then? Asked one of them. Say no. You are here to be cured of your wound, not your flat feet. Did you have any trouble with them in the field? No, well, there you are. At present you can still walk, but if once the old boy gets you under the knife, you'll be cripples. What he wants is little dogs to experiment with, so the war is a glorious time for him, as it is for all the surgeons. You take a look down below at the staff. There are a dozen fellows hobbling around that he has operated on. A lot of them have been here all the time since 14 and 15. Not a single one of them can walk better than he could before, almost all of them worse, and most only with plaster legs. Every 6 months he catches them again and breaks their bones afresh, and every time is going to be the successful one. You take my word, he won't dare to do it if you say no. "Ach, man," says one of the two unfortunates, "better your feet than your brain box. There's no telling what you'll get if you go back out there again. They can do with me just as they please, so long as I get back home. Better to have a club foot than be dead." The other, a young fellow like ourselves, won't have it done. One morning the old man has the two hauled up and lectures and jaws at them so long that in the end they consent. What else could they do? They are mere privates, and he is a big bug. They are brought back chloroformed and plastered. It is going badly with Albert. They have taken him and amputated his leg. The whole leg has been taken off from the thigh. Now he hardly speaks any more. Once he says he will shoot himself the first time he can get hold of his revolver again. A new convoy arrives. Our room gets two blind men. One of them is a very youthful musician. The sisters never have a knife with them when they feed him. He has already snatched one from a sister. But in spite of this caution, there is an incident. In the evening, while he is being fed, the sister is called away and leaves the plate with the fork on his table. He gropes for the fork, seizes it, and drives it with all his force against his heart. Then he snatches up a shoe and strikes with it against the handle as hard as he can. We call for help, and 3 men are necessary to take the fork away from him. The blunt prongs had already penetrated deep. He abuses us all night so that no one can go to sleep. In the morning, he has lockjaw. Again, beds become empty. Day after day goes by with pain and fear, groans and death gurgles. Even the death room is no use anymore. It is too small. Fellows die during the night in our room. They go even faster than the sisters can cope with them. But one day the door flies open, the flat trolley rolls in, and there on the stretcher, pale, thin, upright and triumphant, with his shaggy head of curls, sits Peter. Sister Libertine, with beaming looks, pushes him over to his former bed. He is back from the dying room. We have long supposed him dead. He looks round. What do you say now? And even Joseph has to admit that it is the first time he has ever known of such a thing. Gradually, a few of us venture to stand up, and I am given crutches to hobble around on, but I do not make much use of them. I cannot bear Albert's gaze as I move about the room. His eyes always follow me with such a strange look, so I sometimes escape to the corridor. There I can move about more freely. On the next floor below are the abdominal and spine cases, head wounds and double amputations. On the right side of the wing are the jaw wounds, gas cases, nose, ear, and neck wounds. On the left, the blind and the lung wounds, pelvis wounds, wounds in the joints, wounds in the testicles, wounds in the intestines. Here a man realizes for the first time in how many places a man can get hit. 2 fellows die of tetanus. Their skin turns pale, their limbs stiffen. At last only their eyes live, stubbornly. Many of the wounded have their shattered limbs hanging free in the air from a gallows. Underneath the wound, a basin is placed into which the pus drips. Every 2 or 3 hours the vessel is emptied. Other men lie in stretching bandages with heavy weights hanging from the end of the bed. I see intestine wounds that are constantly full of excreta. The surgeon's clerk shows me X-ray photographs of completely smashed hip bones, knees, and shoulders. A man cannot realize that above such shattered bodies there are still human faces in which life goes its daily round. And this is only one hospital, one single station. There are hundreds of thousands in Germany, hundreds of thousands in France, hundreds of thousands in Russia. How senseless is everything that can ever be written, done, or thought when such things are possible? It must all be lies and of no account when the culture of 1,000 years could not prevent this stream of blood being poured out, these torture chambers in their hundreds of thousands. A hospital alone shows what war is. I am young, I am 20 years old, yet I know nothing of life but despair, death, fear, and fatuous superficiality cast over an abyss of sorrow. I see how peoples are set against one another, and in silence, unknowingly, foolishly, obediently, innocently slay one another. I see that the keenest brains of the world invent weapons and words to make it yet more refined and enduring. And all men of my age, here and over there, throughout the whole world, see these things. All my generation is experiencing these things with me. What would our fathers do if we suddenly stood up and came before them and proffered our account? What do they expect of us if a time ever comes when the war is over? Through the years, our business has been killing. It was our first calling in life. Our knowledge of life is limited to death. What will happen afterwards? And what shall come out of us? The oldest man in our room is Lewandowski. He is 40 and has already lain 10 months in the hospital with a severe abdominal wound. Just in the last few weeks, he has improved sufficiently to be able to hobble about doubled up. For some days past, he has been in great excitement. His wife has written to him from the little home in Poland where she lives, telling him that she has saved up enough money to pay for the fare and is coming to see him. She is already on the way and may arrive any day. Lewandowski has lost his appetite. He even gives away red cabbage and sausage after he has had a couple of mouthfuls. He goes round the room perpetually with the letter. Everyone has already read it a dozen times. The postmarks have been examined heaven knows how often. The address is hardly legible any longer for spots of grease and thumb marks, and in the end, what is sure to happen, happens. Lewandowski develops a fever and has to go back to bed. He has not seen his wife for 2 years. In the meantime, she has given birth to a child, whom she is bringing with her. But something else occupies Lewandowski's thoughts. He had hoped to get permission to go out when his old woman came. For obviously seeing is all very well, but when a man gets his wife again after such a long time, if at all possible, a man wants something else besides. Lewandowski has discussed it all with us at great length. In the army there are no secrets about such things. And what's more, nobody finds anything objectionable in it. Those of us who are already able to go out have told him of a couple of very good spots in the town, parks and squares, where he would not be disturbed. One of us even knows of a little room. But what is the use? There Lewandowski lies in bed with his troubles. Life holds no more joy for him if he has to forego this affair. We console him and promise to get over the difficulty somehow or other. One afternoon his wife appears, a tousled little thing with anxious, quick eyes like a bird in a sort of black, crinkly mantilla with ribbons. Heaven knows where she inherited the thing. She murmurs something softly and stands shyly in the doorway. It terrifies her that there are 6 of us men present. "Well, Maria," says Lewandowski, and gulps dangerously with his Adam's apple. "You can come in all right. They won't hurt you." She goes the round and proffers each of us her hand. Then she produces the child, which in the interval has done something in its napkin. From a large handbag embroidered with pearls, she takes out a clean one and makes the child fresh and presentable. This dispels her first embarrassment, and the two begin to talk. Lewandowski is very fidgety. Every now and then he squints across at us, most unhappily with his round goggle eyes. The time is favourable. The doctor's visit is over. At the most, there couldn't be more than one sister left in the ward. So one of us goes out to prospect. He comes back and nods. Not a soul to be seen. Now's your chance. Johann, set to. The two speak together in an undertone. The woman turns a little red and looks embarrassed. We grin good-naturedly and make pooh-poohing gestures. What does it matter? The devil take all the conventions. They were made for other times. Here lies the carpenter Johann Lewandowski, a soldier shot to a cripple, and there is his wife. Who knows when he will see her again? He wants to have her, and he should have her. Good. Two men stand at the door to forestall the sisters and keep them occupied if they chance to come along. They agree to stand guard for a quarter of an hour or thereabouts. Lewandowski can only lie on his side, so one of us props a couple of pillows against his back. Albert gets the child to hold. We all turn round a bit. The black mantilla disappears under the bedclothes. We make a great clatter and play scat noisily. All goes well. I hold a club solo with 4 jacks, which nearly goes the round. In the process, we almost forget Lewandowski. After a while, the child begins to squall, although Albert, in desperation, rocks it to and fro. Then there is a bit of creaking and rustling, and as we look up casually, we see that the child has the bottle in its mouth and is back again with its mother. The business is over. We now feel ourselves like one big family. The woman is rather quieter, and Lewandowski lies there sweating and beaming. He unpacks the embroidered handbag, and a couple of good sausages comes to light. Lewandowski takes up the knife with a flourish and saws the meat into slices. With a handsome gesture, he waves toward us, and the little woman goes from one to the other and smiles at us and hands round the sausage. She now looks quite handsome. We call her mother. She is pleased and shakes up our pillows for us. After a few weeks, I have to go each morning to the massage department. There my leg is harnessed up and made to move. The arm has healed long since. New convoys arrive from the line. The bandages are no longer made of cloth, but of white crepe paper. Rag bandages have become scarce at the front. Albert's stump heals well. The wound is almost closed. In a few weeks he should go off to an institute for artificial limbs. He continues not to talk much, and is much more solemn than formerly. He often breaks off in his speech and stares in front of him. If he were not here with us, he would have shot himself long ago. But now he is over the worst of it, and he often looks on while we play scat. I get convalescent leave. My mother does not want to let me go away. She is so feeble. It is all much worse than it was last time. Then I am sent on from the base and return once more to the line. Parting from my friend Albert Kropp was very hard, but a man gets used to that sort of thing in the army. Chapter 11. We count the weeks no more. It was winter when I came up, and when the shells exploded, the frozen clods of earth were just as dangerous as the fragments. Now the trees are green again. Our life alternates between billets and the front. We have almost grown accustomed to it. War is a cause of death like cancer and tuberculosis, like influenza and dysentery. The deaths are merely more frequent, more varied and terrible. Our thoughts are clay. They are molded with the changes of the days. When we are resting, they are good. Under fire, they are dead. Fields of craters within and without. Everyone is so, not only ourselves here. The things that existed before are no longer valid, and one practically knows them no more. Distinctions, breeding, education are changed, are almost blotted out, and hardly recognizable any longer. Sometimes they give an advantage for profiting by a situation, but they also bring consequences along with them in that they arouse prejudices which have to be overcome. It is as though formerly we were coins of different provinces, and now we are melted down and all bear the same stamp. To rediscover the old distinctions, the metal itself must be tested. First, we are soldiers, and afterwards, in a strange and shamefaced fashion, individual men as well. It is a great brotherhood, which to a condition of life arising out of the midst of danger, out of the tension and forlornness of death, adds something of the good fellowship of the folk song, of the feeling of solidarity of convicts, and of the desperate loyalty to one another of men condemned to death, seeking in a wholly unpathetic way a fleeting enjoyment of the hours as they come. If one wants to appraise it, it is at once heroic and banal. But who wants to do that? It is this, for example, that makes Djardin spoon down his ham and pea soup in such tearing haste when an enemy attack is reported, simply because he cannot be sure that in an hour's time he will still be alive. We have discussed at length whether it is right or not to do so. Cat condemns it because, he says, a man has to reckon with the possibility of an abdominal wound, and that is more dangerous on a full stomach than on an empty one. Such things are real problems. They are serious matters to us. They cannot be otherwise. Here, on the borders of death, life follows an amazingly simple course. It is limited to what is most necessary. All else lies buried in gloomy sleep. In that lies our primitiveness and our survival. Were we more subtly differentiated, we must long since have gone mad, have deserted, or have fallen. As in a polar expedition, every expression of life must serve only the preservation of existence and is absolutely focused on that. All else is banished because it would consume energies unnecessarily. That is the only way to save ourselves. In the quiet hours when the puzzling reflection of former days, like a blurred mirror, projects beyond me the figure of my present existence, I often sit over against myself as before a stranger and wonder how the unnameable active principle that calls itself life has adapted itself even to this form. All other expressions lie in a winter sleep. Life is simply one continual watch against the menace of death. It has transformed us into unthinking animals in order to give us the weapon of instinct. It has reinforced us with dullness so that we do not go to pieces before the horror which would overwhelm us if we had clear, conscious thought. It has awakened in us the sense of comradeship so that we escape the abyss of solitude. It has lent us the indifference of wild creatures so that in spite of all we perceive the positive in every moment and store it up as a reserve against the onslaught of nothingness. Thus we live a closed, hard existence of the utmost superficiality, and rarely does an incident strike out a spark. But then, unexpectedly, a flame of grievous and terrible yearning flares up. Those are the dangerous moments. They show us that the adjustment is only artificial, that it is not simple rest, but sharpest struggle for rest. In the outward form of our life, we are hardly distinguishable from bushmen, but whereas the latter can be so always because they are so truly, and at best may develop further by exertion of their spiritual forces, with us it is the reverse. Our inner forces are not exerted toward regeneration, but toward degeneration. The bushmen are primitive, and naturally so, but we are primitive in an artificial sense, and by virtue of the utmost effort. And at night, waking out of a dream, overwhelmed and bewitched by the crowding faces, a man perceives with alarm how slight is the support, how thin the boundary that divides him from the darkness. We are little flames poorly sheltered by frail walls against the storm of dissolution and madness in which we flicker and sometimes almost go out. Then the muffled roar of the battle becomes a ring that encircles us. We creep in upon ourselves and with big eyes stare into the night. Our only comfort is the steady breathing of our comrades asleep, and thus we wait for the morning. Every day and every hour, every shell and every death cuts into this thin support, and the years waste it rapidly. I see how it is already gradually breaking down around me. There is the mad story of deterring. He was one of those who kept himself to himself. His misfortune was that he saw a cherry tree in a garden. We were just coming back from the front line, and at a turning of the road near our new billets, marvelous in the morning twilight, stood this cherry tree before us. It had no leaves, but was one white mass of blossom. In the evening, deterring was not to be seen. Then at last he came back and had a couple of branches of cherry blossom in his hand. We made fun of him and asked whether he was going to a wedding. He made no answer, but laid them on his bed. During the night I heard him making a noise. He seemed to be packing. I sensed something amiss and went over to him. He made out it was nothing, and I said to him, "Don't do anything silly, Datering." "Ach, why, it's merely that I can't sleep." "What did you pick the cherry branches for?" "I might have been going to get some more cherry branches," he replied, evasively, and after a while, "I have a big orchard with cherry trees at home. When they are in blossom, from the hayloft, they look like one single sheet, so white. It is just the time. Perhaps you will get leave soon. You may even be sent back as a farmer." He nodded, but he was far away. When these peasants are excited, they have a curious expression, a mixture of cow and yearning God, half stupid and half rapt. In order to turn him away from his thoughts, I asked him for a piece of bread. He gave it to me without a murmur. That was suspicious, for he is usually tight-fisted. So I stayed awake. Nothing happened. In the morning, he was as usual. Apparently, he had noticed that I had been watching him, but the second morning after he was gone. I noticed it, but said nothing, in order to give him time. He might perhaps get through. Various fellows have already got into Holland, but at roll call he was missed. A week after we heard that he had been caught by the field gendarmes, those despicable military police. He had headed toward Germany. That was hopeless, of course. And of course, he did everything else just as idiotically. Anyone might have known that his flight was only homesickness and a momentary aberration. But what does a court-martial hundreds of miles behind the front line know about it? We have heard nothing more of deterring, but sometimes it broke out in other ways, this danger, these pent-up things, as from an overheated boiler. It will be enough to tell how Berger met his end. Our trenches have now for some time been shot to pieces, and we have an elastic line, so that there is practically no longer any proper trench warfare. When attack and counterattack have waged backwards and forwards, there remains a broken line and a bitter struggle from crater to crater. The front line has been penetrated, and everywhere small groups have established themselves. The fight is carried on from clusters of shell holes. We are in a crater. The English are coming down obliquely. They are turning our flank and working in behind us. We are surrounded. It is not easy to surrender. Fog and smoke hang over us. No one would recognize that we wanted to give ourselves up, and perhaps we don't want to. A man doesn't even know himself at such moments. We hear the explosions of the hand grenades coming toward us. Our machine gun sweeps over the semicircle in front of us. The cooling water evaporates. We hastily pass round the case. Every man pisses in it, and thus we again have water and are able to continue firing. But behind us, the attack crashes ever nearer. A few minutes and we are lost. Then, at closest range, a second machine gun bursts out. It is set up in a crater alongside us. Berger has fetched it, and now the counterattack comes over from behind. We are set free and make contact with the rear. Afterwards, as we lie in comparatively good cover, one of the food carriers reports that a couple of 100 yards distant there lies a wounded messenger dog. "Where?" asks Berger. The other describes the place to him. Berger goes off either to fetch the beast in or to shoot it. 6 months ago he would not have cared, he would have been reasonable. We try to prevent him. Then, as he goes off grimly, all we can say is, "You're mad," and let him go. For these cases of frontline madness become dangerous if one is not able to fling the man to the ground and hold him fast. And Berger is 6 feet and the most powerful man in the company. He is absolutely mad, for he has to pass through the barrage, but this lightning that lowers somewhere above us all has struck him and made him demented. It affects others so that they begin to rave, to run away. There was one man who even tried to dig himself into the ground with hands, feet, and teeth. It is true, such things are often simulated, but the pretense itself is a symptom. Berger, who means to finish off the dog, is carried off with a wound in the pelvis, and one of the fellows who carry him gets a bullet in the cheek while doing it. Müller is dead. Someone shot him point blank with a Varet light in the stomach. He lived for half an hour, quite conscious and in terrible pain. Before he died, he handed over his pocketbook to me and bequeathed me his boots, the same that he once inherited from Kemmerich. I wear them, for they fit me quite well. After me, Jaden will get them. I have promised them to him. We have been able to bury Müller, but he is not likely to remain long undisturbed. Our lines are falling back. There are too many fresh English and American regiments over there. There's too much corned beef and white wheaten bread. Too many new guns, too many aeroplanes. But we are emaciated and starved. Our food is so bad and mixed up with so much substitute stuff that it makes us ill. The factory owners in Germany have grown wealthy. Dysentery dissolves our bowels. The latrine poles are always densely crowded. The people at home ought to be shown these grey, yellow, miserable, wasted faces here, these bent figures from whose bodies the colic wrings out the blood, and who, with lips trembling and distorted with pain, grin at one another and say, "It is not much sense pulling up one's trousers again." Our artillery is fired out. It has too few shells, and the barrels are so worn that they shoot uncertainly and scatter so widely as even to fall on ourselves. We have too few horses. Our fresh troops are anemic boys in need of rest, who cannot carry a pack, but merely know how to die. By thousands. They understand nothing about warfare, they simply go on and let themselves be shot down. A single flyer routed 2 companies of them for a joke, just as they came fresh from the train, before they had ever heard of such a thing as cover. Germany ought to be empty soon, says Cat. We have given up hope that someday an end may come. We never think so far. A man can stop a bullet and be killed, he can get wounded, and then the hospital is his next stop. There, if they do not amputate him, he sooner or later falls into the hands of one of those staff surgeons who, with the war service cross in his buttonhole, says to him, "What? One leg a bit short. If you have any pluck, you don't need to run at the front. The man is A1. Dismiss." Cat tells a story that has travelled the whole length of the front from the Vosges to Flanders, of the staff surgeon who reads the names on the list, and when a man comes before him without looking up says, "A1. We need soldiers up there." A fellow with a wooden leg comes up before him. The staff surgeon again says, "A1. And then, Cat raises his voice. The fellow says to him, "I already have a wooden leg, but when I go back again and they shoot off my head, then I will get a wooden head made and become a staff surgeon." This answer tickles us all immensely. There may be good doctors, and there are, lots of them. All the same, every soldier, sometime during his hundreds of inspections, falls into the clutches of one of these countless hero-grabbers who pride themselves on changing as many C3s and B3s as possible into A1s. There are many such stories. They are mostly far more bitter. All the same, they have nothing to do with mutiny or lead swinging. They are merely honest and call a thing by its name, for there is a very great deal of fraud, injustice, and baseness in the army. Is it nothing that regiment after regiment returns again and again to the ever more hopeless struggle, that attack follows attack along the weakening, retreating, crumbling line? From a mockery, the tanks have become a terrible weapon. Armored, they come rolling on in long lines, and more than anything else embody for us the horror of war. We do not see the guns that bombard us. The attacking lines of the enemy infantry are men like ourselves, but these tanks are machines. Their caterpillars run on as endless as the war. They are annihilation. They roll without feeling into the craters and climb up again without stopping. A fleet of roaring, smoke-belching armor-clads, invulnerable steel beasts squashing the dead and the wounded. We shrivel up in our thin skin before them. Against their colossal weight, our arms are sticks of straw, and our hand grenades matches. Shells, gas clouds, and flotillas of tanks, shattering, starvation, death, dysentery, influenza, typhus, murder, burning, death, trenches, hospitals, the common grave. There are no other possibilities. In one attack, our company commander, Bertink, falls. He was one of those superb frontline officers who are foremost in every hot place. He was with us for 2 years without being wounded, so that something had to happen in the end. We occupy a crater and get surrounded. The stink of petroleum or oil blows across with the fumes of powder. 2 fellows with a flamethrower are seen. One carries the tin on his back. The other has the hose in his hands from which the fire spouts. If they get so near that they can reach us, we are done for. We cannot retreat yet. We open fire on them, but they work nearer, and things begin to look bad. Bertink is lying in the hole with us. When he sees that we cannot escape because under the sharp fire we must make the most of this cover, he takes a rifle, crawls out of the hole, and lying down, propped on his elbows, he takes aim. He fires. The same moment a bullet smacks into him. They have got him. Still he lies and aims again. Once he shifts and again takes his aim. At last the rifle cracks. Bertink lets the gun drop and says, "Good," and slips back into the hole. The hindermost of the two flamethrowers is hit. He falls. The hose slips away from the other fellow. The fire squirts about on all sides, and the man burns. Bertink has a chest wound. After a while, a fragment smashes away his chin, and the same fragment has sufficient force to tear open Lear's hip. Lear groans as he supports himself on his arm. He bleeds quickly. No one can help him. Like an emptying tube, after a couple of minutes he collapses. What use is it to him now that he was such a good mathematician at school? The months pass by. The summer of 1918 is the most bloody and the most terrible. The days stand like angels in gold and blue, incomprehensible, above the ring of annihilation. Every man here knows that we are losing the war. Not much is said about it. We are falling back. We will not be able to attack again after this big offensive. We have no more men and no more ammunition. Still, the campaign goes on. The dying goes on. Summer of 1918. Never has life in its niggardliness seemed to us so desirable as now. The red poppies in the meadows round our billets, the smooth beetles on the blades of grass, the warm evenings in the cool, dim rooms, the black, mysterious trees of the twilight, the stars and the flowing waters, dreams and long sleep. Oh, life, life, life. Summer of 1918. Never was so much silently suffered as in the moment when we depart once again for the front line. Wild, tormenting rumours of an armistice and peace are in the air. They lay hold on our hearts and make the return to the front harder than ever. Summer of 1918. Never was life in the line more bitter and more full of horror than in the hours of the bombardment, when the blanched faces lie in the dirt and the hands clutch at the one thought, "No! No! Not now! Not now, at the last moment." Summer of 1918. Breath of hope that sweeps over the scorched fields, raging fever of impatience, of disappointment, of the most agonizing terror of death, insensate question. Why? Why do they not make an end? And why do these rumors of an end fly about? There are so many airmen here, and they are so sure of themselves that they give chase to single individuals, just as though they were hares. For every one German plane, there come at least 5 English and American. For one hungry, wretched German soldier come 5 of the enemy, fresh and fit. For one German army loaf, there are 50 tins of canned beef over there. We are not beaten, for as soldiers we are better and more experienced. We are simply crushed and driven back by overwhelmingly superior forces. Behind us lie rainy weeks, grey sky, grey fluid earth, grey dying. If we go out, the rain at once soaks through our overcoat and clothing, and we remain wet all the time we are in the line. We never get dry. Those who